Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Hotline League. I'm sorry if I'm peeking. I'm trying not to. But it's going to be a banger episode after some depresso episodes recently. We've decided that we're going to talk about League of Legends competitively and less about all the other drama, except I think PapaSmithy has some drama we're going to be talking about here in a little bit. Or some drama. No, there's some drama you want to talk about. You were making the case for it at the start of the show.
I just said give the people what they want, Travis. That's what this show's all about.
That's fair. And you know why it's an exciting episode is because we are headed into playoffs, which means not only do we have matchups that are happening in just a couple of days that we can talk about and preview, but we also have two guests here who we've already revealed one of them, who are from the organization that is first in the league right now. We have MVP voting that I have to be doing in the next 24 hours, so folks can call in and make arguments for that, and PapaSmithy can try to position his entire team as the all-pro vote. We can do all sorts of stuff here this episode, but before we get into that, let me introduce my co-host. It's Cubby. Cubby, how's it going?
Good. We were doing VOD reviews for LCS, and I had 30 minutes to kill, so I'm getting through. You know, I know you guys like to talk about media on here, so it's Drive to Survive season and also Full Swing season on Netflix. I'm getting all my sports documentaries in.
Yeah, you know what's a show that I saw the trailer for? I'd seen a 30-second trailer and I was not super pumped about it, or I was like, okay, maybe this will be something, but then I saw the 3-minute trailer for Fallout, which
Not a fan.
No, it looks really good. The 3-minute trailer made me excited for it. I'm like, this is going to be legit. Yeah, so we'll see what happens. I was playing the Fallout Magic set yesterday, so maybe that has some of it. But like I saw it before I played the Magic set, and I was pumped about it. We've got two guests this week. They are none other than, well, first off, I should say PapaSmithy, who we've already teased. But how's it going, PapaSmithy?
Always good. Staying here late at the office for some burning some midnight oil, talking LCS with the boys. So
nice.
Should be fun.
Yeah, exciting. We're going to talk about a lot of LCS stuff on this episode. Joining him for the first time in his capacity on the show is a member of FlyQuest, I believe, Andy Barton, who is the GM of... Is it GM? Is that your current title for FlyQuest?
Yeah, that's the correct title, General Manager of FlyQuest. And so, overseeing our League of Legends team, had a great weekend, and, just super excited to be here.
Yes. And I know that it's in vogue right now to leak DMs with GMs. So I figured I will leak the one that I had with Andy about coming on the show. On Friday, I messaged him and said, any interest in having both you and Chris on Hotline League on Monday? He said, Ari's down. Did you bring Chris on it? I'll see him later today so we can check. I said, not yet, because I just saw your tweet about something, so I just hit you up. He's like, I'll get back to you. Then on Saturday, did not get back to me. I said, what's up? And he said, we are waiting the results of this weekend, LOL. And I said, that'll change if you come on. He said, I'll chat more with Chris about it tomorrow. Then once they had locked in first place, I got the message, we will go on. So was that what happened? You guys were like, well, we'll only do it if we get first?
I think the timeline, right? But the thing that you're not mentioning there is that just like the last time I agreed to come on to Hotline League, and then the days of the week change happened to make it Thursday, Friday, or Wednesday, Thursday, or whatever it was at that point.
Yeah.
Other developments happened, and I was like talking about that and explaining FlyQuest not being first doesn't sound like the best use of my Monday night. So
were you talking about the double lift Dodo stuff? That you were. I don't think that's going to dominate this episode as much as you think it is, especially with playoffs and MVP.
Yeah, people love talking about the Worlds and the LCS and not the juicy drama.
Oh my God, I don't know. Well, so for folks who have not been paying attention, correct me if I'm wrong, folks. We can go through whether or not I'm missing something here, because I'll admit that I found the drama to be quite boring, but. Double Lift basically accused Dodo of misleading Steve in the offseason and sort of killing his chances of joining Team Liquid. Then Dodo came out with an explanation saying that was not the case, that he had he had some conversations, but ultimately Jojo wanted to go someplace else, and so that kind of killed it. And then Double Lift said that was misleading and leaked some logs, which then people have interpreted in either direction. And some have said that they corroborate Dodo. Some have said that they reveal him to be a a sinister individual with malicious intent. And now we're just sitting here, and everybody has picked their sides, I guess. But I don't know. Am I getting anything wrong? I don't know if the three of you have paid attention to that in a bigger way than I have.
So I think for me, I actually didn't look into it too much, and I think I really didn't look into it all that much because I would have been probably more shocked to see JoJo go to TL over, C9 or FlyQuest in this case. So that's probably why I just didn't put too much stock into really what happened or how it went down. So yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, if we have a call that where somebody wants to talk about the context of, should Doublelift have joined Team Liquid or what, I'm happy to take maybe a single call about it, but I don't want it to dominate the episode. And like, I do think it's very funny because I was talking to an old friend of mine who I used to work with, who now works at Riot, and we were discussing how this split has had maybe some drama on the Riot side in terms of, we're taking a break, or obviously there were layoffs. But there's not been as much team drama or player drama. Normally you have like week 3 benchings that happen of some popular player, or Jat and Alfari are going to war, or there's usually some crazy shit that's happening. Doublelift is getting benched. There's usually some drama that is happening in Spring Split, and we just haven't really seen any this time. And so it is nice of Peter to, at the end of the 6 weeks, ignite some sort of controversy.
I mean, the on the Rift stuff theoretically was more hype than the off the Rift, right? Like the C9 super team not igniting like people thought after the first 3 games, and the defending champions almost missing playoffs. Like, to me, those are like on the Rift stories that have been kind of like the biggest ticket, I guess. Whereas you're right, the off the Rift stuff has been a bit stale.
Yeah, there's not been as much TMZ, I guess. So anyway, we can talk about that, but I think the bigger stuff, Cubby, what's been going on? What do we want to talk about in terms of the game and LCS and all that type of stuff?
I mean, I'm really curious if people like have takes about All Pro, because like I know I don't get a ballot, which this is actually my campaign to get a ballot, since Papa and Andy here are gonna campaign to sell their challengers team because they're first as well, and a lot of them deserve LCS spots. I deserve a ballot. That's my campaign.
You also deserve an LCS spot, but continue.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you, Papa. But I'm really curious what people think about All Pro, because I think some of the positions are quite interesting, especially AD, if anyone has takes there. And then I think that there is some of an MVP discussion. For me, I'm pretty solid on the River train, but I'm sure that people might be pitching Inspired, Blippo, or Quid as well. That like could be candidates. I kind of interested what the community thinks there. So yeah, I think that there's actually like a lot of interesting discussion around some of the awards. There weren't a lot of games, and there were a lot of surprises. Some of the typical faces that you would see in All Pro are not going to be there this split. Like, I don't think we're going to see Core, Fudge, Berserker in top 3. I'd be very surprised if that was the case. So room for some new faces.
Yeah, I'm trying to fill this out in the next 24 hours, and it would be very helpful if people could help me unravel this on the course of the show, because like, even especially, I know other people have references too, but just the ADC side is it's a rough one. So yeah,
I feel like there's going to be a lot of difference between media reviews or media ballots and player ballots, just because there's even more one-sided amount of scrims to stage games being played. So I think Berserker will still get votes from ADs just because, in scrims he's good and he feel pressured by him. And in general, if you ask a pro player, they don't watch other LCS teams unless it's like right before their match or 2 after their match and they're traveling home. So it's basically who did I feel most pressured by in lane in scrims. So I think Berserker will still get votes.
No, I mean, that's always kind of... Oh, go ahead, Andy.
No, I was going to say, I've heard a few of the player ballots, and they were going to vary greatly compared to that of the media. So expect big differences there.
Yeah, that's what's really funny is that everybody always shits on the media, but there's usually like one random outlet that has like voted for, based off of their personal fandom or something. But the troll votes, or so quote unquote troll votes, usually do come from the players. So I'm to both of your points, I feel like we'll see more of that. I do want to congratulate both of you on FlyQuest finishing first. I was under the impression it was 100 Thieves at first, and then I became aware that it was FlyQuest. So I don't know. What did you guys? I don't know. For folks that missed this, 100 Thieves did after their win on Sunday a victory lap and tweeted that they'd secured first, and a lot of the players and coaches were quote tweeting that and saying that they were, I don't know, really proud of doing it. And then and then FlyQuest came in with the right hook and actually did get the tiebreaker over the top of them. Not in a tiebreaker match, but just head to head. So I don't know what you all thought of that, but I thought it was kind of funny.
I mean, it was amusing. Like, clearly they were making like an impressions play, you know, get in first with the we finished first kind of vibe, and the retraction that comes later that they'll never actually publish. Like, nobody notices that. So at the end of the day, you know, they tied for first. They lost in a tiebreaker. Was it a oopsie? Was it just we'll get all the impressions? It doesn't matter. History won't remember it. So enjoy the impressions, I guess.
It's the new media playbook, you know. No one remembers the edit.
True.
I mean, we were backstage and a little confused by it, so we were like, "Wait, I thought we finished first."
Yeah. Yeah. That is funny though. All right, so but congratulations on first. How much of a surprise was to you guys? Was this sort of the only way that you would feel successful? I know playoffs is really what matters, but I mean, where are you guys sort of putting your feather in the cap for first in the regular season?
Yeah, I think on our end, you know, getting first place in regular season is great. Obviously, playoffs is the most important thing, but I think, you know, for us and going into this split, you know, solidifying ourselves as a top performing team was incredibly important. And, you know, really proud to say I think we've done that at this point. And really, we're just trying to lay the foundation for, you know, summer split. And when, you know, Worlds comes along, that is really what's most important here. And obviously, we still have MSI we have to go through. But did we really expect to, you know, come out the gate swinging first place immediately? Not necessarily. But we did expect to be a top team. And I think really we saw shades of that throughout the regular season, the split.
Yeah, I think all in all, like, obviously our roster construction year on year is very different. Like, last year was more of the super team. We need results now. Every best of one loss, like an investigation, was kind of the vibe of the Prince roster we had last year. I think this year we were a lot more grounded in our expectations. I was actually really ill in January, so we couldn't record like a, you know, Andrew and Chris sit down and you kind of like talk about the expectations. But if I had spoken before the split started, it would have been you know, development spring into making it to Worlds and then retaining a core of players year on year. Because something that FlyQuest, even before my tenure, is known to do is, you know, overturn the roster, you know, 5 players change kind of vibe, which we did do between 2023 and 2024, and establishing a core, continuing to, you know, keep a settled roster as much as possible. The Travis sound bites into finding success over time was much more the vibe. And so first in the regular season to me is like, oh, something about our process is working and we're moving towards our goal maybe at a faster pace than we would have expected. But this is very much a pop quiz. I feel like regular season is 14 pop quizzes and then the exams start now. So when teams just being able to prepare for just us, do we hold up under the studio lights with like a, you know, not quite a rookie bot lane, but next to a rookie bot lane? That's to be decided still.
Yeah. And I know we want to get some more questions into both of you here in a second, but Cubby, do you want to do the spiel in terms of how folks can get on the show? We haven't done it, I think, in a little bit.
Yeah. So if you guys want to call in, keep in mind a lot of the topics today. Honestly, it's a really exciting week that we have because we have playoffs coming up, and there are all pro ballots that are being filled out within 24 hours, according to Travis. So if you have any takes about end of the regular season, the playoff previews, all pro ballots, what you guys saw within the games, or of course any takes for the FlyQuest front office, feel free. You guys can join with the if you are watching on Twitch or YouTube, !, Discord or discord.gg/Travis. We'll get you in the Discord. You can join at Cubby in the chat to make sure that I can see your take. And I will say in the past, I've pulled like 5 or 6 takes before the show starts, but right now I've only got 3. So we got a lot of room for good takes if you guys have anything that you want these guys to talk about. And if you do fit in a Challengers question, they took first in both leagues, and I know they really want to promote their players there too. So, you know, might be a good time.
Cubby will smuggle in Challenger content.
Yeah, we might. I mean, if people are talking about roster swaps, I think the FlyQuest Challengers is the first place to look for roster swaps in NA. So that's something that, you know, we've said goodbye to a couple teams, and if anyone has takes on that, that could be interesting with these guys as well.
So I will mention, by the way, that if you are a sub, thank you for being a sub. You can get access to the subtopics channel on Discord. We are working on trying to get that going on YouTube. If it's not working yet, please let me know, because I know we were having some conversations about trying to get that fixed so that members would also get access to the subtopics channel. But that channel does move a little slower than pleb topics, so getting on the show there, maybe it's a little easier to catch Cubby that way. Also, please do me a favor and keep. I've seen some folks put in sort of like essays for Cubby in terms of what their take is, and Cubby's trying to both interact with our guests and keep an eye on chat and come up with his own stuff and also pull takes. So whenever you give an essay long thesis on the statement, or why FlyQuest needs to drop all 5 of their players after placing first, it's just going to be a weird situation. So but I'll give Cubby a couple more minutes to find some folks to put into the waiting room. While that happens, just want to get both of your takes on the spring split overall. I mean, I know, it's like been a kind of a weird split. We had only 6 weeks. We had a big break in the middle, but also, and only 8 teams, but also we've had some really great games, and there's been a lot of conversation about whether or not LCS is stronger than LEC right now. Why C9 and folks aren't going well. So I guess any surprises or things that you really enjoyed about the regular season this year? PapaSmithy or Andrew Barton?
What you got, Andrew?
I think for me, my hottest or biggest take was I really did think Immortals would end up doing better. At least for us in scrims, I felt like this was a really strong team and they performed really well. And so I'm looking forward to seeing them come into Summer Split with, a reset record and see how they perform. You never know how much, the record got under them and whatnot. But honestly, I thought they played super well, and I kind of look forward to seeing how they return in summer.
Awesome.
Yeah, I think from my side, seeing a wave of positivity around the studio. Like I was actually sitting in the studio a lot. I didn't go backstage this year, and seeing full studio audience and the vibes being better and the broadcast being super watchable. I've enjoyed the shorter turnaround between games. I just think the product has been strong. And then on the competitive side, that there's a lot of like blue shelling from like especially Shopify, but in general, there's no hope teams. And I think that means that when I look at the like list of 4 games each day, I'm not really like planning a 1-hour break here and there. Like everything's watchable to good, and I think that just means it's a stronger product.
Yeah. I was really happy like with the products. I have never lived in LA and like seen the studio on weekends, and it was so much more alive this year than last year. And I'm actually with you, Andy, about IMT. Like even looking back at all the tape I've seen, I really felt like IMT was a playoff team. Like there were like I can look back and think of like there was one game this weekend against 100 Thieves, and like 2 others just off the top of my head where I'm like, wow, like this singular play, like they just lost the game off this, right? And they were winning or in really winning positions. And I week 1 or week 2, I went to LCS and I had C9, NRG, and you guys all told me like, dude, IMT is the scrim team. Like everyone wants to scrim IMT. Like these guys are good. They were good in week 2. I thought they're gonna be like a middle of the pack playoff team. And so I'm actually kind of bummed to see them out of playoffs because I watched this team and I still think they're good, and they just didn't like have the record to make it. It's kind of weird.
They just didn't have the killer instinct. It felt like like they would overthink or overplay everything or underplay, I guess. Like it just never came together in the critical moments. So yeah, I think everyone will talk about them as a scrim team. I guess like FlyQuest Summer 2023, right? Like unfortunately, the scrims just didn't translate.
Yeah, on the positive side for FlyQuest, I think this is post-franchising a record high for the team in terms of placement.
Regular season, yeah.
Yeah. So it's, they're moving up, no longer 9th or 10th. Yes.
We improved. We couldn't actually get worse because we contracted the league to 8 teams, but we will take
it's one way to avoid 9th and 10th. All right. So I'll read out some subs while Cubby is finalizing the waiting room. But really quickly, thank you to Hustbust, Spud Tugger, Swede Be Good gifted a sub to PapaSmithy, Cloaca Queen, So many things, 64 months. I feel like the names are getting more ridiculous as time goes on. Irish Kelp, Side Quest, Ixbix with the 10 gifted subs. What are you doing here? Lucas, or Luca WS, and then Director Donut. And then over on YouTube, we did have a couple of folks who decided to throw some support. John became a member. Jeremy with a $10 super chat. Can't watch right now, but I'm sure it's going to be a great shout out to Jeremy if you're listening later on. Cocaine Sniffles, who says 2 lines, one for Travis, one for Cubby. Thank you. And then Bob and George, thank you for the gift. So thanks everyone for the support. All right, let's get into our first caller. It is Gambirino. Gambirino, where are you calling from?
Hey, I'm calling from Grand Forks, North Dakota.
North Dakota. What do you want to talk about on the show?
Hey, yeah, so I wanted to talk about the LCS is going to be shifting from live patch to a fixed patch during the playoffs. And what I wanted to focus on is how the skill sets for teams developing their strategies is going to change from trying to figure out the newest and best thing very quickly to trying to refine their strategy and being really precise with their gameplay and their team comps.
Yeah, do you think it's a dramatic change, really, Gambirino?
I think it is the dramatic change because, like, in this last week, a patch dropped like 2 or 3 days before LCS started, whereas now finals are going to be on the patch the players have been playing on for multiple weeks straight.
Yeah. I mean, sorry, caller, is that everything? I didn't give you a chance to elaborate, but
yeah, that's everything.
Okay, cool. Yeah, on the FlyQuest side, I mean, how much has this split been different in terms of how often these patches have been hitting? And how quickly people have to iterate, and do you think that this will change at all the way in which we see teams pop off or otherwise once we move to sort of the old school stable patch system?
So I think from my perspective, and I actually heard some great answer on pros when the pro players have actually talked about this, but a new patch will hit and we kind of get to the weekend and maybe we aren't sure specifically what is OP yet. There's still a lot of testing happening. And so it really isn't until kind of that second week where you see the play style become a little more defined and you see probably more clean gameplay and whatnot, a little less testing. So as we actually advance through playoffs, I would expect gameplay to become a lot more clean, a lot more better, the meta to become a little bit more defined. So I just think you're going to end up seeing a little bit more cleaner gameplay and a lot less testing from the practice side as well as even on stage.
There's been some pretty egregious days like this past week where the games are on Friday, so the patch only hits the live server Wednesday, so it's like literally 2 days of solo queue, with the plebs and then whatever you did in scrims. And I think that those won't self-select, but it's a short week, it's a short turnaround for at least the teams in the top 4, like Thursday, Friday with a Monday day off is a couple of days of scrims, and then teams are going to be already into best of 5s as of Thursday. I think as the playoffs go on is when you'll really feel the change, because I think that the thing that happened in new patch weeks when it was live patch is if you got 4 games on Maokai support and then played it on stage, like how many games of Maokai support did your opponent see? Like it could be 0 or 1. And I think that like surprise factor of a new pick when you can finally look sideways and like stare at solo queue data and more data piles up will be felt in kind of like second week of playoffs. But second week of playoffs, you're down to 4 teams at that point. Like, so I do think that the like specific kind of 14.5 meta won't be explored till probably like another week of games into playoffs. So that's when you'll start to feel it. And then by the time you get to like finals weekend, it's only 3 teams. There's limited scrims, so there's going to be a lot of watching other regions and trying to put it together.
Yeah. I honestly I'm excited for the fix patch because I think one of the bigger parts about playoffs is like, is this year going to be hotfixed or not? I don't know if you guys have word on that, but I think Azir being disabled could be huge for playoffs if that's the case. Like
the last we heard was that like it was likely to be disabled. I don't know if we got official ruling in yet. If it is, like it's like a world kind of like issue, right? Like it's definitely not just a LCS issue. And what are the like blind mid laners that are good with Azir gone and all those things? Like it's definitely going to be a big story, but it's going to warp some champ selects, that's for sure.
Yeah, and like I think a lot of the community reaction might be like, oh no, like this affects FlyQuest the most. I think it really affects C9. Like I think that Jojo, like he can obviously play Azir and a lot of other champs, but I think that Azir kind of brings together a lot of the other champ pools that are strong for C9. This is something that Kelsey's been saying a lot, someone that did coach Jojo. And like I think makes sense when I think about C9 as a team. And I think the fixed patch, like I'm really interested to see the 100 Thieves C9 match. I kind of want to save ideas for that one for later, but I think that the patch and how each team approaches the other could have a really big impact. Like I know 100 Thieves has been hot, but there's one place to punish them, and it is laning. C9, they do lane well, even though they have issues later in the game. It's going to be kind of a fun clash of different styles, and I'm interested to see like how into the patch the teams get and if that has a big impact on that game.
I don't know if you have a question or a take on this, Cubby. Do you have a take on kind of like the reverting to no more pre-recorded drafts, obviously, as part of the format changes too? So I think
maybe, but we could talk about that now, like given that it kind of
just a workflow change of no longer having like your warm up is now going back to being a warm up, not a prep your matchup warm up.
Yeah,
like, that's one thing that people have been missing in like the LEC fans kind of like seeing pre-recorded draft for the first time is there's this idea of like, oh, matchups are being solved in the in a 1v1 beforehand. How does that affect things? And I think that's completely valid when the format is different for playoffs.
Yeah.
But I think now coming in and when do you get access to coaches, like the champ select going straight into game rather than being that 15-minute 10-minute break afterwards is also going to be something that people have to adapt to. Like that's all Master's known on LCS stage, at least, is that workflow. He obviously came from Academy last year, so there's definitely going to be adaptations in kind of access to your coaches and order of workflow things that are going to have effects, at least in the first best of 5 people play.
Yeah, I would actually echo that a lot, and I think that the workflow combination right there is actually more important than maybe like being on the fixed patch. Because like Chris said, Masu's only known this workflow, but all of our other players have seen the previous historical way. And even as you get to international competition, this is the way it's done. And so, and I saw some takes about EU kind of being mad at that. And I think that will be really interesting once international competition starts and to see if there are any ramifications really from it.
Yeah, I'm excited for the 30-minute downtime between every game on the broadcast. I think that's going to be fantastic to see that return. This is a random, I know it's a tangent on a tangent, but what did you guys think about it feels like the pre-recorded draft thing was fairly embraced on the LCS side, and I've seen, I don't know if it's mostly all coming from Cadril or if it's generally a thing, but it's funny to me that on the LEC side it has been much more controversial and there's been much more pushback. Any thoughts on why it might be that this is not being as well received on the LEC side?
I think that like some players over there, like it kind of took them out of their groove. Like I saw at least one PGL where they were talking to the top laner of MDK, Merwin, and he didn't like it. I have mixed feelings on it because I think that part of the game is being able to adapt on the fly. But I mean, you guys like tell me because I haven't been behind the scenes for the workflow. Like, I mean, how much are you able to solve in 10, 15 minutes? Like, do you like how much different is it? Like, are you able to warm up like 1v1s because that's something that's common for a lot of teams?
I mean, Andrew can speak to it more, but like you're almost as on the outside as I am, right? In terms of like who actually is part of the, like, how does it work the moment it gets to champ select, Andrew?
Yeah, so what I would say here, it's vastly different. And so basically 10 minutes into the previous game, our players will go and start their draft. And until that Nexus explodes, they're kind of in a room talking about the game. And so, for example, if you have the NRG game going to 50 minutes and your players now get 30 or 40 minutes backstage to talk about the composition they draft, how are we going to play it out, what are the lanes going to look like and whatnot. So you actually have a ton of time where your player and coaches are stuck in a room operating under a think tank and just thinking about how the game will play out. So I think that is a just massively different workflow than what has happened historically. You know, sometimes, you know, for example, our players can be practicing 1v1s and whatnot, and, you know, that is extremely advantageous. So, you know,
Confirm,
there's a lot of
do they
stuff.
have access to the internet or, you know, anybody outside the room? Is it
No
just the
internet.
7? Got it. So it's just the 5 players and 2 coaches, right?
Yep.
So it's still like you can't go on like pro builds and like work out shit like that, but it is, you know, you can play the 1v1s, which is I guess the training tool that's available.
Yeah, I don't know. I wonder if it would have been better received had it happened at the start of the season as sort of like, oh, here's a package of things that we're putting in. Maybe it was just the fact that it came in like once the season was already starting. But I don't know. I mean, I think it's good, and like I hope that this becomes a bit of a global standard, because it's interesting to me that the argument, or one of the arguments against it, is like, oh, this is something that is so different at international competitions and stuff. But I think it maybe shouldn't be different at international competitions. Like, it's actually good from a broadcast experience to have much faster turnarounds. So I don't know. I get that there's a competitive integrity component, but we're now in playoffs and that opportunity is going to be gone. So I hope that that will be the thing that pushes our teams to adapt in. So
I would say, and perhaps this is why, you know, EU is kind of outbursting at first, but for the people backstage, it doesn't really feel quicker. But, you know, I've heard from fans and whatnot, it is quicker.
There was a timer up today that it was like roughly 6 to 7 minutes faster.
Yeah, it's a lot faster. It's really nice from a fan perspective. Like I like it a lot.
Where did you see the timer, PapaSmithy?
There was like a Reddit thread that like
Okay.
compared the turnaround times in LCS and LEC.
Yeah, it's funny because like 5 or 6 minutes doesn't seem like that long when you're just like, oh, what?
Right.
It's like 5. But when you make that change to the broadcast and you're doing it between every game, like that adds up, and sometimes the difference between like retaining a viewer or not is in that 5 minutes. Like, you know, if they get up, they go use the restroom, they grab a pagoda egg roll, and they, you know, come back and the game is not started yet, they might wander off and do something else or change the stream and then never come back. But like, you can, if they do get back and everything's good, you know, you're in a much better spot. So I don't know. I think it's overall pretty good. But I know we started talking about the patch changes and now have kind of encompassed all the different changes that we're going to see as we head into playoffs. But Gambirino, anything that you wanted to that you thought we didn't touch on here, or anything that else you wanted to point out?
One thing I guess I was trying to I wanted to also ask about was with the because one thing that's kind of weird from an outside perspective is the regular season seems to be testing more ability as a player to adapt to to changes very quickly, like this past week that with 2 days of the patch drop. But now all of a sudden the playoffs, where teams qualified with those skill sets, are now being tested by a different set of skills, and that doesn't, at least to me, doesn't seem fair to teams who didn't qualify. That now the winner of the LCS is going to be decided by a different set of skills.
I think to some degree it's always some degree of that, right? Like you could just lock a patch from day 1 of regular season to the end, but A, it would feel bad for Riot because they want people to be playing a game that represents what there is at home, and B, I think rolling with patches is why League of Legends is so different from traditional sports. Like the fact that it changes so quickly. I agree that there being like this arbitrary marker and it changing is so odd. I don't know if it'll be like that next year. I don't know how regular this will become, but I think ultimately the difference in like a fixed patch versus changing patch is usually pretty nuanced outside of new champions being introduced. And when it comes to like this first week of matches, especially, which is elimination matches for at least 2 teams, there's still no 14.5 data there from other regions to look at anyway. So I think it'll get exacerbated when we get to like 4 teams or 3 teams, but for now it doesn't change too much.
I will say, like, as long as people are playing by the same rule set, like, I don't care as much about format. And I have the opinion, it might be of the minority, but I wish that League was on like a 4 to 6 week patch cycle, because I feel like innovation within the patch actually forces people to get better in the game. I think that the game is patched a little bit too quickly, and one of my favorite parts about Worlds is stuff like, you know, you can have Victor emerge as a counter into Aatrox, and all of a sudden the meta completely changes, like what happened in Season 8, or MSI with CLG bringing out ranged supports like throughout the patch. I think that it's really cool that teams are able to innovate within the same rule set, and I think that's a really fun part about the game. I wish there were longer patch cycles.
I think the best example for you was like 2018, right? When the one that I remember is we had like a 3-week break between LCK semis and LCK finals because Asia Games happened in 2018. And for viewers that weren't around at that time, we went from like a balanced meta to, with 3 weeks of no LCK into the final, there were these whispers of like, by the way, Urgot's OP. And we had no Urgot games in any level and anywhere in any tier 1 region. LPL was playing it a little bit like 2 weeks later. And then I'm like, I'm the analyst with Atlas on the final, and it's like I'm trying to catch up the fans because there's no like data points to show, and I'm like, hey, I've been hearing whispers that Urgot is like potentially a first pick, first ban champion, because I was talking to casters beforehand, and the Korean casters were like, yep, we heard the same thing. We hear it's busted. And so suddenly this champion who had not been touched, picked, or banned was instant first picked every game with like Unsealed Silver just winning lane in top, and it was kind of like those like StarCraft Brood War stories of like how much innovation can happen on a settled patch. So it'll probably never happen again. It was like a quirk of a weird scheduling thing, but I do agree, Cubby, that once in a while it definitely has curveballs to show.
Yeah. I actually prefer the way League of Legends does it with patches and whatnot. That's very much of a Dodo approach where, you probably spend about 6 to 8 weeks, if not more, on a patch. And, what Cubby was describing actually does happen, where you kind of solve a meta at first, you go into a big circle, testing stuff. And by the end of the circle, you kind of revert back to what has happened. And so what I like in League of Legends is, where we see these kind of 2-3 week patch cycles. I've actually found that, investing in your staff and players who are, maybe even more theoretical and can think quickly and adapt and whatnot will actually pay off more dividends than, you probably think. So, it's a little bit of a difference between the games and choosing what you invest in with skill sets and whatnot. But, that's kind of differences I've noticed between the two.
Awesome. Hey, thanks so much, caller, for calling in. Anything that you want to shout out here at the end?
I'd like to shout out the new TFT set in PB because I've been having a lot of fun with that, with messing around with the new art style they have going there.
Nice. Is it? When is it launching? Because I am actually going to get back into it when the new set hits.
I believe it's the next patch, so March 20th ish.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'm excited to get back into it. I really like the last patch or the last set, so it'll be fun to get into a new one. So, regardless, thank you so much for the call, and we'll catch you next time.
All right, thank you.
All right, on to the next caller we go. Thank you to Benjamin for 47 months. To Maine with the tier 2. I've been noticing these tier 2s popping up lately. They are very cool to see. Thank you. Wombat Baby with the Prime and the Real Celsius. And then over on YouTube, we have 2 big membership draws. King Manchi with the 5 gifts and Heian with the 5 gifts as well. So thank you, folks, for doing that. YouTube is not always the most monetized platform for me, so it's very cool to see folks coming in and supporting that. Icebreaker's here. Icebreaker, thanks for breaking the ice. Where are you calling from?
I am calling from the crossroads of America, Indianapolis, Indiana.
Indianapolis, Indiana. What do you want to talk about on the show?
Well, one, I am a YouTube member. And,
hey, thank you.
Yeah.
It exists in the real world. Wow.
Yes,
I know,
exactly.
we do exist. And my take is, so congratulations to FlyQuest on getting first place. But my take is that from a product side for the LCS, 100 Thieves is the best team that could be sent to MSI. You have Sniper in the top lane. He got 12 solo kills this split. You have River and Quid, who I think are the flashiest mid-jungle in the LCS right now. And Meech and Ayla, who are rookies in the bot lane, and I think could do a lot with the international experience that they would get there. And I guess my pitch to you on why 100 Thieves should go is picture this. T1, 100 Thieves. Sniper solo kills Zeus in the top lane, dances in his chair. The moment will live on in infamy.
So why not both, Icebreaker?
Why not both what?
Both teams going to MSI, FlyQuest and 100 Thieves.
I'm not saying FlyQuest shouldn't go. I think they would also be very good, and Masu and Busio in the bottom lane would also get a lot of experience. And I think that FlyQuest's top side in general is one of the better ones in the LCS, and they probably have a better chance to do better at MSI But purely from a product side, with aligning with how the LCS has been branding with live patch and innovation, I think, like especially with this last weekend with the Shaco Vagar game, 100 Thieves would be able to pull out some more interesting champions.
Did we get word on how serious the Shaco Vagar game was?
I mean, it was debated in our coach chat too, obviously, because like when you see Blind Vagar, you're like, okay, that's interesting. Then you see Shaco, and you're like, okay, that's interesting. But 100 Thieves had no incentive to lose. Like there was no like, let's lower our chances because we get a more favorable draw that way. Ramifications, like they wanted to win. So I think that that was just the comp they had. I know there was an interview with David Shynock and Golden Glue where they basically talked about it, and it's just a preset draft they had. Like they were not responding really too much to what NRG was doing. They just thought the draft was sick and it won. So credit to them.
Yeah.
I mean, genius curveball to throw before playoffs. You know, now I got to worry about Vygar and Shaco coming in. That's great from 100 Thieves. Why not?
The two most mispronounced names in League of Legends too. It's painful to me. It's Vagar and Shaco. Yeah, I don't know. It's funny to me that you're tying caller. I like that you're tying it as like a product argument. You're like, it's not that I'm a 100 Thieves fan or anything like that. You're like, we really want the branding of the LCS, which is we've been trying to push fun and innovation, and this 5-bad roster is what is tied to that branding in a way that like maybe FlyQuest isn't or whatever. And to be clear for the folks that don't know, LCS does get 2 teams into MSI, so it's not as if both teams can't go, but I think we can kind of take it on the premise of, hey, which team is the better representative for the LCS? You know, if there was a big push pit behind one, which one would it be? I mean, go ahead.
I think Andrew's the best person to answer this, because if a team like 100 Thieves were to go to Worlds, like the closest thing I can even picture to that, and 100 Thieves is younger than this, but it would be the EG squad that went to MSI when Jojo won his rookie year with Danny. And I am personally
against my team, Cubby.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, but I'm of the opinion that sending newer teams to international events is really good for the region. Like you get another team that comes back and like has experienced a lot of stuff. I think NRG going to Worlds was really good. Like not only do they do really well, but all those guys learned a lot. It's been a while since some of them went international, and like for some, it's the first time. I think that like both FlyQuest and 100 Thieves going, like I would love for Masu and Busio to go international and get their tails whipped over there, and I'd love for 100 Thieves to go international and like get their tails whipped over there in scrims. I think it'd be really good, but I'm kind of interested in what Andy thinks.
Yeah, I'm a little worried about sending 100T and kind of seeing the T1 100T scrims and really how those are going to go. So I don't want to say I would think there's, too big of a skill gap, if they were to go, but I think that's something I would worry about, to be honest. But I think the solo queue practice would be fantastic. Them getting experience would be fantastic. But I think for me, really the 2 teams I want to see go for the sake of the LCS and really, seeing ourselves really push our region would probably be FlyQuest and C9. I think both of the ceilings of these teams have the potential really to gain the most out of the practice out of there, and really just helping to propel the LCS forward, since I think, these are our 2 strongest teams in the region. Definitely understand why, we would want to see 100 Thieves over there. But, I struggle with, seeing how they're going to perform from a practice schedule, really what that's going to look like for them. So that's been my big concern for them. I don't know how productive it will be for them. Obviously, will be great, but I really struggle with that. But I am someone who probably overanalyzes scrims compared to most people. I do have that innate bias, so that's kind of my 2 cents on it.
Yeah, the other thing we're not talking about here is like Cloud9 and or NRG, which I think are the 2 other contenders that people would probably place as options for MSI. And I don't know if we want to broaden the conversation out to that, but like Cubby, are you do you see either of those teams being a better option for over 100T in terms of an MSI participant?
I mean, I think for competition wise, like, do I want to send C9 or not? That's actually a good question, because like C9 for me has been like kind of meh. And it feels like JoJo's saved that team in a couple games.
I mean, he
and
did this weekend for sure.
Yeah. I mean, Shopify Rebellion saved them a bit too, but that's fine. We'll give the credits to JoJo for some good plays.
Sure.
I think it kind of is a 3-team race. Again, I really am. I think the C900 Thieves series, like, that's the banger, because that's going to dictate a lot of playoffs. Because like the loser, I think, faces NRG in the bracket. And I'm really interested to see like what happens, because I feel like it's like two pretty different styles clashing, and if C9 can kind of patch up their mid game, then I think they have a chance. But if not, then I think 100 Thieves can blitz them. So that's gonna be a really interesting series. I don't know who I'd rather send though.
I think that we should roll with the caller a bit though. Like, remember that 100 Thieves representing North America presupposes they beat FlyQuest or C9. These teams that obviously we're a FlyQuest team, and C9's obviously got players that you would imagine like the core of C9, whether it would be the 5 members or 3 of the 5, would like be the strongest power ranking team you could have if you ask most fans. Like 100 Thieves beating those teams in a best of 5 with no best of 5 experience is like a lot to run with, and I'm sure the caller is just imagining, Sniper, a very exuberant young man. I interviewed him and flew his family over to LA to like hire him to 100 Thieves when he was 14 years old with his family. Like, he's got the main character energy. He might as well be real life Goku. Trying to like go international, and the one pop-off clip of like a young North American player who grew up on the server succeeding, like, does that inspire a new generation of players? Like, you can run with that narrative. There's so much presupposed there to get to that moment, but if it happens, would it be big for the LCS product? Like, sure, that sounds like a narrative thing. That sounds like something that you write and hope comes together, or you try to fake it. But if it actually happened organically, it would be huge for the LCS. So I can't argue with the caller. That would be awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it would be fun. I mean, we'd seen, when Golden Guardians went, when NRG went, we've seen these stories in the recent years of underdog teams making it to international events, and it being exciting to see them participate. Cubby, do we have an NRG caller as of right now?
We can pull one. We have a couple NRG Wolfles in here.
Yeah, I feel like we should. I won't bring up NRG then, because I do think. Yeah. Like I think they are one of the most interesting stories going into playoffs. So we can, if we do have folks who want to talk about NRG, I think that might be fun. We can save that for later then. So, all right, Icebreaker. It sounds like people are generally excited about the idea of 100T going, even if they're skeptical about how they'd perform. So, but I don't. I guess. To get back to your major point, I don't know if 100 Thieves would be my favorite pick for a MSI participant if I could only pick one team, if only because I am interested in seeing what some of our strongest performers can do at international events, especially. I know it's especially post-break, it's lost a little bit of the steam, but the hype for LCS compared to, for instance, LEC was super, super cool, and I just worry that 100 Thieves doesn't have the like experience yet to be able to put up a big fight. So maybe it's our secondary team. We'll see how they go. But yeah, thanks so much for the call. Anything you want to shout
out? Shout out to the FlyQuest staff for coming on. It was a very interesting hearing you guys all talk about that. And shout out to you, Travis. Keep up the good work.
Thank you so much. Yeah, have a good one.
Yeah,
no shout out to Cubby.
Yeah.
Hey. I just took the call.
No, shout out to Cubby. Chicago boy.
It doesn't count now. It's too late.
Oh.
Thanks so much for the call. We'll catch you next time.
Yeah. Bye.
Some horseshoes.
All right. We'll take a quick break to talk about our sponsor. Our sponsor for this show. They are the most incredible, wonderful partner that we could possibly ever ask for. And I know you love them. I love them. Our sponsor is you, because we don't have a sponsor on the corporate side right now, so it's all you folks. So thank you so much for sponsoring the show. Throughout the week, sometimes I will just get a little notification from my support link tree that somebody sent along, $5 or $10, and that stuff is quite helpful, and especially as we're going into month 2 without any kind of sponsor for Hotline League or my other content. We're having some promising conversations with some really cool folks that are already in the space, so hopefully that comes about in the next couple of months. Especially, I'd love to go to MSI, though that's pretty up in the air as it is right now. But until then, you all and the, I guess, general ad revenue from YouTube are the things that are paying rent and helping to make sure that I can pay the contract folks that work with me and all that type of stuff. So if you are interested in helping to support this content, especially as we're in esports winter and waiting for the next, I guess, paycheck to come in, you could do so at the link tree, which is in the YouTube description. I think we also end up putting that in the podcast description. There's a bunch of different ways to support, including free ways, like free, including ways that don't require you to spend money, such as Twitch Prime, right? Not only, I guess, you're paying for an Amazon Prime membership, but you get the point. So there's that, and then and then if you're watching live, those Twitch subs, the YouTube memberships, and I know YouTube, we haven't had as much content recently that's been members only, but it's been a couple weeks, but we'll get back to that very soon. So thank you to everybody who does support this content. It is very much appreciated, and I legitimately, it is incredibly helpful as we really don't have revenue besides the paltry YouTube AdSense that is what we're doing these days. So thank you to everybody who supports the show. Anyway, we can grab the next caller, and as Cubby goes to grab the next caller, thank you to Real Celsius, Mr. Chips, Christabel with the 75 months. Thank you. Pog, I'm a sponsor. Man, 75 months is crazy. Scrap dude, I can't say the full name, Prime, but thank you. SkyG, thank you for gifting a sub to League of Emily. So thanks everybody for the support. All right, we've got Human Boy YesYes, a reference to Warhammer. Thank you for calling in. Where are you calling from?
Rochester, Minnesota.
Rochester, Minnesota. What do you want to talk about on the show?
A little bit of energy, a little bit of C9. Now I think FlyQuest and 100 Thieves are by far the favorites, but I would argue Dignitas and Team Liquid actually have better shots at MSI than NRG or C9.
Oh my god, this is the spiciest take of the night already. I could tell. It's been a while since we've had a call like this. Sorry, continue.
It's insane considering where we started the season, where it's like, oh man, C9 is clearly the best team, but NRG are the defending champions, and now I'm arguing they're 5th and 6th in this playoffs. Like, I don't know, man. I'm not feeling it.
Wait, sorry. Who are 5th and 6th in the playoffs?
NRG and C9, I would argue, are power ranked 5th and 6th for me.
Okay.
So I do have reasons for this. I'm not just throwing these out.
Please. Dear God, I hope you do.
So I feel like they have reverse strengths and weaknesses. So like Dignitas, their players aren't the best, right? Their players aren't the best, but they have been on top of the meta this whole season that I've been watching. Like Tomo was the first one to pick up Smolder, and they've been spamming it whenever it's left open. Rich picked the top lane TF and looks pretty good on it, but Rich has also just been playing anything that comes out. Dove has been playing the meta stuff all along, and I trust a team that clearly has a good read on the meta, maybe don't have the best hands, versus C9, where their hands are amazing, but they can't seem to figure out what good champions are, and they're still taking Berserker like it's 3 months ago. Taking Lucian like it's 3 months ago. Doesn't make any sense. He does 0 damage the whole game and gets carried to a win. I don't know. Like, Jojo's taken a Kali, which hasn't looked good all season. He doesn't seem to play a lot of Ahri or Azir. Like, he plays some, but he keeps taking these weird picks. Blabber's been a little off.
Who are you a fan of, Caller? Either presently or traditionally, who are you a fan of?
100T back when you ran it. Favorite team of all time. Currently FlyQuest because I love Bwipo.
Got it. Continue.
Yeah, so that's, I'll stop ranting about that, but I think C9 has really weird meta picks. Dignitas has great meta picks. On the other side, TL and NRG are backwards, I think, where NRG is really underperforming in a lot of different lanes, and I think Team Liquid's only underperforming in one lane, where it's like, Impact's doing pretty well. Umpty has some int moments, but overall, he's hitting more than he's missing. Core JJ and Yon are also doing pretty good, whereas APA, he's struggling. I won't pretend. I love APA, but he's struggling right now. Well, like, Palafox is throwing games on his own when he can't hit a single charm on Ahri. Dokla, as some chat and Discord is saying, is having one of the worst seasons of his life. Contracts is solo carrying games. I won't diss him at all. But then like FBI and Huhi, they have some weird lanes like Senna Wukong, where Wukong has 2 items and still does 0 damage and dies instantly. It's like, hey, NRG, what's going on? So I'm just saying.
Are you less worried about, because this kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier in the show, where we are moving to like a stable patch. Does that change anything for you? Because it sounds like you're more worried about teams that don't understand the meta, but theoretically, that will be, we'll be moving into a more stable world in this next patch.
That is fair. I think that only speaks to the Dignitas C9 comparison I made, but I will say I feel like there's other issues there that's not. C9 is too stupid to know what champions are good, you guys, but I feel like there's some bullheadedness in that group where they just like, I don't know if they're not listening to their analysts or whatnot, but that team has a wildly different take on what's good than the rest of the LCS. And I think it's showing in their score, considering the names on that team. It's like, oh, okay, you guys are like barely breaking 50-50 and you have Jojo and Berserker and Blabber.
Yeah.
So.
All right. Who wants to dive in? This is a spicy one. Who wants to dive in on it first?
It's a lot to take in. The baseline of that TL and Dig have a better chance to make MSI than C9 and NRG. I will disagree with C9. I think that Dig over NRG isn't unreasonable. Like, given the play that we saw this last week, I think the real question is like, Dokla was in a tough situation. I know someone from NRG, whether it was the main account or ThinkCard, tweeted out that on Friday, like, he was in urgent care and then decided to play. Honestly, props to him for trying to gut it out. It takes a little bit of a dog in you to do that. Unfortunately, it wasn't enough to like carry through and win the game. But I hope that he's like feeling better for next week so he can perform. But like, even ignoring this past week, I think that like I can look back at a lot of NRG games and be like, man, like either Dokla or Palafox did have a lot of games where it's like they just never really connected to the server, like not like the player I'm used to seeing. So I think that like that could be a concern coming into a best of 5. Like, are NRG able to put together like 5 games where they can make it through a tough opponent? Because like again, I think like they have to face C9 or 100 Thieves that drop down. That's hard. Like that's not an easy matchup for them. So I am kind of concerned about NRG. I think that Dig also like the one thing I'll give Dig is that Dig for me has a style, whereas when like NRG's style for me has kind of been like, all right, we're gonna try and smork early game and smash, and if it works, it works, and if not, like we'll see what happens if we can make things chaotic as the game moves on. Whereas Dig for me, it's like we're very much gonna play towards Tomo and Isles being good laners and go from there. And I think that that's been like a little bit more consistent in what I've seen Dig play out, and I think that like matters going into playoffs. You have to make sure that your style is good enough to go up, like beat 3-4 opponents depending on what your bracket looks like, and that matters.
I think for me, I probably have a similar take as Cubby. I'm definitely not discounting C9. I think I almost agree with the caller to an extent, but C9 has been really, really odd this split, especially I think the way they've approached draft. And I think, I feel like I've almost concluded that, they've been sandbagging a little bit of their drafts in preparation for playoffs. And so maybe we don't know their, full priorities and whatnot. Because I think their approach to draft throughout the regular season has been really interesting. And it's just been odd for me, and I can't imagine a world where, Jojo is underperforming in playoffs and, how he's going to take things. So C9 is definitely a team that I think is extremely strong still, so I would not discount them. And then from Dignitas and NRG, I would probably still take NRG, but, I think Dig has been performing okay by the end of the split. I even like TL. Honestly, I really like how they've been playing. APA has obviously been a little bit of weak. Maybe there's been a little bit of weakness out of bot lane, but I think Umpty and Impact have a lot of faith in them to show up. I think Umpty's been, really phenomenal, especially from an entertainment perspective. I've really enjoyed having this player in the LCS, and so I want to continue to see TL have success. Obviously not this week, but would like to see them have success, after we beat them.
Yeah, I think overall, what you can say, like, to me, is most similar between C9 and NRG, who are the two that you've grouped as like the bottom 2 of 6, is that they seem a bit kind of confused in what they want to play and around who they want to play and what their style is, which that was like the defining thing about NRG is they understood their style coming into playoffs last year and at Worlds. And so I find it weird that, changing one member and bringing in Huhi, who obviously has pre-existing synergy with FBI, would kind of lead to that. But they're like failing the eye test in terms of like individual players, and they just haven't got it together. I think with C9, it probably was the like super team analysis paralysis of we can do everything. Let's all have our moment to shine. Oh wait, it's not working, kind of thing. Like, I'm pretty confident if they just played mid jungle combo champs with Blabber and Jojo and just like ground that in through scrims, played a lot of Talia Vi and things like that. Like, they should win with that. They just have player strength on their side, but they've never really hit their stride. And to the caller's point about playoffs being where they're exposed, I do think that teams that understand their style, of the four, Dignitas probably understands the style the most, but are kind of player gapped compared to some of these other teams with just better players or better rosters. I do think that will count against them over time. They're also not in the double chance bracket. If they were in upper bracket, maybe there would be a different story there. And then Team Liquid, they seem to have found their color more recently, like actually playing through top a bit more than I would have expected, like more than we did at FlyQuest. Although when we did it at FlyQuest, it gave us some of our only wins towards the end of summer. So I think you have to always put faith in previous accomplishments when you're on the outside. Like, people thought FlyQuest Summer would get it together till we didn't. People have to hope that NRG and C9 will get it together. And even though I'm with Cubby and Andrew, like, obviously you give more points to C9 in terms of like confidence of getting it together. Like, if NRG makes another Cinderella run, like, we can't be that surprised, right?
Yeah, I mean the bear and bull case on NRG. The bear case is like, oh yeah, Ignar did a lot for that team behind the scenes, and his departure is the reason they've fallen off, and we just didn't realize it until he left how important he was to the success of that team. The bull case is like, hey, NRG's always been a best of 5 team, and in a split where you have rapid meta changes and all that stuff, or maybe the long pre-recorded draft time, teams are able to kind of take advantage of NRG even more than they couldn't before. And now we've got a situation where, like, we're going to go into these best of 5s. NRG can kind of turn it on like they used to. Their staff are there to help them out, although I know they have a lot less this year. And that's what's going to allow them to take off. So, like, I don't know. It's kind of funny. I was not as worried about NRG in the regular season, even though they were kind of underperforming, because I'm like, these are just like NRG things. But I do feel like this past weekend, them losing to Dig, them losing to FlyQuest.
I mean, the recency bias is 0-4, bro. So, like,
yeah, exactly.
I mean,
like, they
even for NRG, I kind of want to take Inspired's quote here, but one of the reasons why I honestly have a hard time giving them a lot of credit going into this year is, if Inspired was in the league last year, do they end up winning? And so I think, that interesting what if storyline is kind of interesting to follow.
That was a funny quote. I don't know. I feel like it's a chance for this team to kind of define like whether they were a one-hit wonder or like if they are actually good with his core. And I'm curious to see if NRG like actually steps up. Because yeah, I mean, it's a team where like I feel like we've all written them off as like, oh, like they won their last regular season when they did win was kind of trolled. This is a team, like, to be fair, like they will take flips. Like they will take a lot of 55 45s and 60 40s and try and make it work. And that's part of why they won and why they were a good team, right? But it also has really hurt them to split. So I hope in best of 5s we get to see more. And I still think like they've had some positives. Like FBI and Hui might both be in like my top 3 for their role. And like, I don't know. I just really need to see more out of Dokla and Palafox. I hope Dokla feels better and can like actually put up a better performance because he's like the solo lanes on that team have been struggling a little bit.
Yeah, last year it's funny. I had a reputation amongst the Hotline League community, and I think the LCS community of being this like CLG NRG hater. Because I was always kind of down on them and they always outperform. This year, I am ironically been a little bit more positive on them, especially because like I really enjoyed what they were able to accomplish in terms of fairly decent roster stability, going to Worlds, putting up an amazing, well, by Western standards, performance. Like they they were this really exciting team. The fact that they maintained 4 of the 5 going into this year was really exciting, and then it's just been kind of strange to see them fall so far. So again, hopefully they are just a playoffs best of 5 team, and we'll see something change. But yeah, I don't know. These last 4 games have been really rough for them. So
it's been tough for Ignar too over there in EU.
Yeah. Well. Yeah. All right. Maybe you should have stuck around. Human Boy, thank you so much for the call. Is there anything we missed on this before I give you your shout-outs?
No, you killed it.
All right, very good. Anything you want to shout out?
I have 3 quick shout-outs. One, shout out to the LCS for drafting 6 teams I care about out of 8. That's a pretty good hit record for you guys. Shout out number 2.
Who are the 6?
Anyone besides Shopify and IMT. I don't care about those 2.
So it sounds about right.
PapaSmithy, shout out to you. You've always put together some compelling rosters on any team you've been involved with, so nice job, you. And shout out number 3, everybody. Remember, it was daylight savings time. You do have to turn your clocks back to Tanner time. Bring DeMonte back. That's all I got.
Yeah. Shout out to DeMonte. Also, shout out to Shopify, because I don't think we're going to probably... Kabi, I assume we don't have a call on them because we're trying to be forward-facing this?
We did have one call that I didn't take, but... they wanted to see Shopify in playoffs instead of NRG.
Oh.
It would have been a spicy
I was just going to say, shout out to Shopify for in one split running the Immortals gauntlet in terms of they showed up immediately, nobody cared. People continue to not care. Then they placed in the bottom 2. Like, it's just, I feel like they've shown up and basically done nothing. I don't know why they spent the money to get in. It's so confusing.
I mean, obviously they're a business with infinite money, so it'll be very interesting to track how long their patience is on achieving nothing.
Yeah, well, maybe take a little bit of that money and do something. I don't know. It's just so fucking bizarre. All right, thanks, Human Boy, for the call, and we'll catch you next time.
Later.
All right, want to grab the next caller, Cubby?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you to Ewok, Swede, for gifting a sub to Busio, Swede for gifting a sub to Killer Dolphin, and then Casual Gamer King. Yay! And then Westcott over there with the $20 super chat on YouTube, and Dante with the $5 super chat. Yeah, the thing that's crazy to me about them is like I feel like almost every other team that I can think of when they came into the split or into the LCS post franchising did like interviews with executives and leadership and explain sort of what their vision was and what they were hoping to accomplish, do all this type of stuff. And like, man, they just have done virtually nothing.
I think we decide it in 12 months, Travis, because I think they might just be trying to get their sea legs under them and like working out how this space moves. Like, again, they have unlimited capital to mobilize. So if it's 3 splits of missing playoffs, sure, but they could look radically different in one split.
Yeah, I will say there were, I think, a bunch of Shopify layoffs earlier this year. They laid off 20% of their global workforce. So, and then that was after 10% last July. So we'll see how much patience they have. Skizzle is here. Skizzle, where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Fairfax, Virginia.
Fairfax, Virginia. What do you want to talk about on the show?
I just would like some copium as a C9 fan, because like I feel like going into like the second round robin, it was obviously bad. It was 4 straight losses. And, they played the top 4 teams in the first part of that, and they did very well. They won 3 of them. So in between the breaks, they beat FlyQuest, TL, and NRG. I guess NRG is kind of a top 4 team, but, at the time they were. And then they lost the base race to Under Thieves. I was like, okay, I'm feeling good. That's okay. And then this weekend, I was like, they're playing 3 bad teams. That's fine. And then you walk into it, and I feel like they had a good game plan because they kept talking about in interviews how they like, we need to figure out what strategies we want to play and how we want to play as a team. And, I feel like playing through side lanes. I like the draft that they played a lot against Dig, and it made sense. I was like, okay. And then against Bortles, I'm sitting there like, why are you drafting Senna? Senna Ornn? And, like, kind of big, I feel like they got baited into that really hard, or kind of did it themselves. And just rolled over. And then the SR game, it just felt like, I don't really know. Like, they were doing this a lot early, especially in their 4th loss, where they, like, at 15 minutes, they lane really well. They got, like, a 1.5K goal lead, and then they just sat in it for 10 minutes, did nothing. And then, like, let the team back into it. And then scrapped for 20 minutes, and then, won a base race instead of lost. So, it felt like Mithy, like, I know there's like a lot of like negative talk on Mithy, and I don't want to sit here and be like any other C9 fan and crap on C9, which happens a lot, or not C9 fans doing that too, which is fine. But I think just coming into this, I was like, okay, this seems good, this is feeling good, but then maybe that's just like them playing disrespectful. But I don't. If they were being disrespectful, I don't know why they would sit in their hands for 10 minutes in mid game. And I don't know. I feel like I was very hopeful in the split, and so it's a bit concerning watching their play, especially the super week. Where I feel like once they got to what was it? They were 7-5, and they're like one game ahead of all the other teams, and it felt like they could it was hard for them to get out of top 4. That they just kind of went back to their improvise on stage kind of deal. Especially with, like,
so can you
that,
can you sum it up into what is your take?
Yeah, what was the later part of the take?
Later part of the take is I'm just like very concerned we're going to lose 100 Thieves and like get 3-0 because like we can't just outlane them and win, and that they're just going to like improvise on stage and do bad in draft.
Is your take then it's Jover for C9?
Maybe if if they don't fix their problems in 3 days, right? Like it's a very quick turnaround. So
yeah.
That's my concern.
Yeah. Cubby.
Honestly, this for me is probably the most interesting matchup out of the two, and out of the ones that could be lower bracket. And part of the reason why for me is that I think C9 is still a really good early game team, and that's the part of the game that 100 Thieves struggles in. And I'm also really curious to see, like, we've had so many people go on pros or just like LCS this year, and they've all been like, oh, Sniper's overhyped. Like, he's actually not that good. He can only like really play his champs. And Sniper's kind of been solo killing all of them. And if anyone wants to actually prove that he has a small champ pool and that he isn't as good as he is, then why not give him the summit treatment in a best of 5? And if I look at the tape with Sniper, that guy will push up on lanes that he shouldn't. And I think very frequently in 100 Thieves games, you will see Sniper fall in a side lane. And it's okay, because he ultimately like brings it back and the team brings it back and they find ways to win. But that is a way that you can pretty consistently punish 100 Thieves. And I really want to see if C9 like actually has a game plan to like try and target Sniper. Because I think that is a way you could give him the summit treatment and try and win games.
I think my expectation is C9 is going to 3-0 100 Thieves. Now, what I'll add there is, they might troll a draft and, probably lose a game. But, I do think if they really get it together on their draft and, start kind of playing as I expect them to, then it should be a 3-0. But like I said in an earlier call, I think, their drafts have been really horrendous throughout this split. And I don't really expect that to be happening in playoffs. And, I think a lot of, the hate kind of Mithy and whatnot can get is probably unwarranted. And, the reality is for a lot of these pro teams, players have massive input in the draft. And so, my concern is, how are these post-game reviews being conducted? What are the takeaways from the drafts that are actually happening? And I think really if they can solve that element, then, a C9 fan shouldn't worry whatsoever.
I will say is that if I had to rate the drafting of like every team from regular season, I actually thought the 100 Thieves had the best drafts, like pound for pound. It's very rare for me to like go back and look at a 100 Thieves game and be like, there's like no direction, like no way they can win this game, right? I feel like they always have a chance or an angle. And I will also give credit that I feel like their drafts mostly focus on what this team's good at, and that is not laning. Like they find ways to get out of lane, cheat lane, and kind of like get to the part of the games where they can do well as a squad. So I think that's like another angle as to why this is so interesting, because I feel like I'm with you. I don't think C9 had strong drafts this season. I think 100 Thieves did. And I'm wondering what happens in a best of 5 when, you get to go back and forth.
Okay, here's my prediction. I think C9 is going to do the old school C9 thing. For newer League of Legends esports fans, you might not know that we used to have something called the Gauntlet that happened every year after summer playoffs for Worlds contention. And I think that C9 will lose to 100T, and then they will go through and they'll lose in a best of 5. Like 100T will win in the best of 5. They'll win in a full 5-game series. And then we're going to see C9 play 25 games in the playoffs to almost double the amount of games that they played in the regular season. And then they'll go to MSI. I don't know if they'll win or not, finals. But they'll go to MSI and they'll be supercharged because they will have tripled their game count by the time they get there. And then C9 will be back in form. And that's what they need, is they need like the training arc. Like, we know this team should be good. We know that they have the potential. They just need 2 more regular seasons worth of games to get there.
The funny thing is, I almost prefer that even happening to us. Like, I think the value of just actually having so many stage games is so freaking important. And, I remember going back to spring playoffs, e.g. 2022, and I think we had more playoff games, or there's some stat out there, but, many of times you actually play more games in the playoffs than all of regular season. And that is so valuable. And, I could go on about this, but I won't.
If you make finals, especially if you go through the lower bracket, the odds that you played more games in playoffs than regular season are above 50% because there are 4 best of 5s that you're playing in.
Yep.
So yeah, yeah.
I hear you guys on it. I think if Azir is disabled for playoffs, it's actually the biggest nerf to C9, especially at those 2 teams. Because to Cubby's point, Azir is a champion that can kind of do everything himself, like scale, bridge, engage, backline DPS, consistent DPS, burst. Like, I think that allowed Jojo to be like legit Superman in games. And if that's disabled, then finding a replacement there is important. My guess, like if C9, C9 wants to beat 100 Thieves in the upper bracket. Obviously, not an elimination game, but it's an important one. I think if they just draft scaling with how good their players naturally are at early game, like if they use their early game strength compared to 100 Thieves early game weakness to like just set up scaling and auto win comps, kind of like the comp we ran into against TL, the Double Dragons comp or something like that. Like I just can't imagine how they lose. But I will say that the common refrain is every time an interviewer or media asks a team side person of who they think will win, 100 Thieves or legit anyone else in the league, you have to draw upon scrims. Like that's what you have to draw upon, and 100 Thieves are woeful in scrims. So you're always going to side with the other team, or you're going to side with the more experienced. So I'm down for them to rewrite the world. Like they fucking just drafted Veigar and Shaco and won. With the Veigar blind. So I trust Grayson. Even when he was my academy coach, he was a wonderful drafter, and he does draft to the strengths of the teams. It's just we can't know how much of a moving target 100 Thieves skill is. People want to look at their play, especially Sniper, and say his like improvement will be linear. But is there ban 3 top laners first pick another one and he's like out of champs? I don't know. If you just counter pick him every game and he doesn't know what the enemy champ does that happen? I don't know. So I think they're not going to get the benefit of the doubt from anyone. I'd probably have a 3-1 just because C9 will troll the draft, but I cannot imagine C9 losing this series.
Yeah.
Man, those scrims must be crazy behind the scenes then. If you guys just aren't giving 100 Thieves a chance.
I mean, did you watch pros where called them a confidence team? Like that's not a good sign.
Yeah,
it's not a good sign.
I mean, I've seen them on stage. I feel like it's a good sign. Those guys are having the time of their life up there. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
All right, Skizzle. I'm sorry, I don't. How much cope were we able to give you for your C9
I feel like
fandom?
it's good enough cope. It's one of those things where like I feel like if I watch it, it's like, oh man, they're gonna lose. But if every other person with better knowledge than me is saying they win, I'm like, I guess I should believe them. That's okay. That's good enough for me.
Yeah. We'll see. I mean, I do think, man, is there any other bigger story going into playoffs, panelists, here than what's going to happen with C9? I feel like that's the biggest story going into this.
I don't know. I think it's just a banger matchup because like there's so many things. I feel like Jojo and Quid have probably been like the 2 strongest mids. You could throw Jensen in the mix, but I feel like Jojo and Quid have had like the biggest individual impacts on their team. River versus Blabber. Last year, Blabber toppled River for MVP, and I'm on the River MVP train this year. Mithy's going up against his old org. Like, there's so many fun things that are going on. Like, Golden Glue was the academy coach when Mithy was over there, right? So, like, he's kind of going up against someone that he was in the building with. I think this game is super hype. And yeah, I'm really excited for this one.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Skizzle. Anything you want to shout out?
Shout out to my wife. She's cleaning the house right now. Shout out to her. And shout out to my dog, Monk, for not barking during this call. I really appreciate that. He's outside that often. So.
Yeah. Thanks so much for the call. We'll catch you next time.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
All right. Shout out to... Oh, buy tickets to see 100T versus C9. They're still available, according to Numi. You can still buy a ticket to watch this match. So that's pretty cool.
You know what? I'm going to ask to watch it right now.
What's that?
I'm going to ask for tickets right now.
Yeah, get in there quick. Thank you to, let's see, SkyG gifted to Emily. Ewok, Swede Be Good, gifted to Busio, Swede gifted to Killer Dolphin, Casual Gamer King, Danny Grimm, E-Smoothie. Thank you, everybody, for the support. It's been fantastic having all of you supporting. Cubby, I know you're trying to message about tickets, but can you also go grab our next caller?
I'll get a caller. We also have room for one more, and we haven't had any MVP takes.
Yeah, MVP, please, folks.
Yeah, we're the end of the year awards. Yeah.
This is your chance. You can lobby with me to decide who should earn what split awards or whatever. Otherwise, I'm just gonna have PapaSmithy and Andy do it, and then there's only a FlyQuest side. We're trying to get your fans in, folks. Deep Space is here. Deep Space, where are you calling from?
State College, PA.
State College, PA. What do you want to talk about on the show?
So my take kind of is a little small lead in. Double's comments on TL Dodo are an example of where esports seriously needs to improve on player relations and communication, where players kind of often put staff in like unwinnable scenarios by pitting the community against them.
He starts laughing. Continue. Sorry.
Just like some background, I don't think I really need to give context on like Double with TL Dodo like example, right? But like staff often have like other kind of priorities rather than kind of responding or like to the community, I guess, right? 3 examples I can pull off of, or Jat and Alfari in 2021 for TL Double Lift twice now, honestly. And then like kind of the classic example is Jensen and Medios with Reapered and C9 all that time ago. I think in traditional sports, players can't really weaponize the community most of the time because fans are fans of the teams rather than fans of players specifically. It's kind of hard to like, but I think it's really hard for coaches and staff to kind of like fight back. I get like fight back's like the wrong word, but they kind of have to balance like, well, if you're doing something, you're doing it on behalf of your team, right? You have to protect their interests and like what they say and kind of their privacy too. So you can't really, like, you don't really have much space to kind of work against the narrative. You get a lot of narratives. I'm a really big TL fan. I'm always simping TL for TL in the chat. But like, I don't think it's super fair to Dodo, who I'm not a big fan of, honestly. But like, I don't think it's fair to Dodo at all what Doublelift was doing.
Well, so we should be clear here. Doublelift not currently a player, right? So it's kind of hard. This situation is difficult additionally because this is a retired player who can sort of. There's not really any kind of ramification, right? Or are you suggesting that there should be some sort of defense?
I'm not saying anything about ramification. I'm just saying in general. I don't think there's much of a difference between a retired player and an active player. Like 2 of my examples were like, well, when Double's first big issue with TL, I think it was 2020, before he went to TSM in summer, he was still an active player then. Jensen Medios with Reaper, they were still active players on C9. And then the biggest one was Jad Alfari. Alfari was still on TL.
Can you give me an example of how you'd like to see things be different? Because I hear you, and I've seen this a lot, right? Where like a player says something, the community comes out and is like, "Oh my God, everyone is evil," and pundits come out and go, "Everyone is evil," and then you kind of like you hear things behind the scenes. It's really hard because maybe media come out and kind of dispute that, but then people don't really care because they're sort of fans of the player. So like, how would you like to see this play out differently from like a practical perspective?
I think ownership needs to get ahead of it, to be honest with you. I don't think like you shouldn't be letting your GM get blasted on Twitter, because if you are, then it kind of shows you don't have faith in them in the first place, right? My only reaction to the Dodo stuff was, well, if Steve doesn't believe in Dodo's ability to construct a roster, then Dodo should be fired. He shouldn't just be like taking a bunch of community flack for no reason. If you ask me.
Steve should have stepped in here and said something in this specific situation.
Like you shouldn't be letting, like, if you don't believe in your employees' ability to do the job, then they shouldn't be doing the job. You know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
But you shouldn't just be letting them take flack for the community for basically nothing. Was my basic take on it. I think
is there much evidence that in this case Steve doesn't believe in Dodo's ability to do the job?
I mean, I don't think TL has had a response to this, and this was like on the front page of Reddit. There was a bunch of
Dodo officially responded in the Discord, and it made it to Reddit. So I guess like they did kind of try and jump in front of this, or at least like I think they tried to simmer it down. I think they did an okay job of managing that. I'm not sure if you said that or you saw the post that like he wrote up. It was pretty neutral. You can.
I mean, they had a whole video called "Why We Didn't Sign Doublelift in the Off Season" that they released at the beginning of the split.
It was kind of like Like it was like a jokey video.
Yeah, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, it was great.
PapaSmithy, what do you think of this? I know it's hard for you to speak on, other teams or whatever, but you've seen the player side, you've seen the GM side. Now you're leading a team. Like, what is your take?
I think that PR is difficult. I think that I believe in the power dynamic scenario where if you're a bricks and mortar organization and choose to move on from someone, you have to do it in a classy way. You don't punch down on someone on the way out. There's like legalities around doing that in California, but there's just being a good person and being kind of like principled. So when you move on from someone, you just announce that, give pretty standard minimal transparency as much as you're comfortable with. And if the player chooses to blast you, I don't think you go back in and blast back, like maybe you have to clarify points. You talk to your other leaders and try to work out if there's anything there that's like, mission critical to your organization's vision to clarify. But otherwise, you just kind of have to eat it because you're the person that chose to like end the relationship. I do understand where the call is coming from. Like, you don't have a geolocated fan base that can like rally behind you or 100 years of history. Double Lift is bigger than any North American esports org, I think, when it comes to like passionate fan base, especially when we're talking about his peak years. Like, he's kind of like the history of North American League of Legends. To me, easily the best North American player of all time. Other people prefer Bjergsen. I'm a Double Lift guy. And so I totally get how this all plays out, but to some degree, it's inevitable. I think when you choose to bring Double Lift into your org, you accept the fact that it's probably going to end poorly one way or the other. But during the good times, they're going to be great times, and you just do right by him. And yes, something might churn at the end, but you take the good with the bad with any single relationship. So it's just the reality here.
Andy,
Yeah, I think
because you're also on the GM side, so you're seeing Dodo, your colleague, get pummeled on this stuff. So
I definitely feel for Dodo. And I think ultimately, as kind of PapaSmithy has said here, it's kind of bound to happen. It's not necessarily a Double Lift thing. It can happen with a lot of different players. And so what I kind of reflect on with the take is, I think as their GM, the relationship you have with, your organization, your ownership group, really the stakeholders who, are a part of, the roster construction process is what is incredibly important here. I think, if Steve didn't believe in Dodo, Dodo would not be there. He would not be building the roster, et cetera, et cetera. And so, my hope is that, really Steve and Dodo are aligned in the offseason, and, stuff like this can absolutely happen, but, they're in constant communication about what's going on. They understand something like this can happen, and they know how to react and to pivot when this information happens. So, I think TL has always been a smart group. I do think they know what they're doing. And so kind of for me, this is like a non-issue, a little bit of standard stuff of what happens in the offseason. Offseason can get really ugly sometimes. It sucks. Not everyone can get picked. But I think Dodo has always done an outstanding job in how he's conducted himself. Never really heard anything there, and so I sort of trust in how TL has done their business here.
Is there, to the caller's point, is there anything that the four of us think should be changed about the way things are handled to try to like push back a little bit on the team, on the player stuff?
So one thing I always thought of was to do a a press conference. Like, you could definitely take the press conference approach. If you remember, that's what Steve did in post the Alfari Jat situation. Is he did a press conference, which I thought was very professional. When I came into 100 Thieves, one of the things I talked about was like, should we do the like football player and say soccer player signing? Like, player comes, wears the jersey for the first time, publicly answers questions, invite a certain amount of media that you respect, and go from there. And if there's demand for that, I think it would be a cool thing to do. Like, if Steve put together like a emergency press conference for today, would that have been like the underscored, like dot I's, cross T's best way to do things? I think so. But the chronology here is the interesting part. Listening to Double Lift, it's like he's representing that there was like multiple timelines that were being kind of like misrepresented to Steve. And then like an outcome happens of which Steve is like, not aware of or being messaged late. And I think if things were as dire as is presented, like if Steve really wasn't aware of what his GM was doing and wanted to be actively involved and was being lied to and or misled, like I can say in my same scenario, no offense to Andrew, but like you would have to end the, you'd have to end that. That's not a real working relationship to have between a leader of a company and a GM. Like the direct one and two. So you would have to hope it's better than it's being represented in the narrative that's been put forward.
Yeah,
I don't think you can press conference this. Like you're going into playoffs. Like I think that this is one that like TL almost had to sweep under the rug, kind of like they did. I mean, I don't know like what's going on in the building. I found this to just be like a really weird like hunt against Dodo. Like regardless, I think that like this only happens because of Doublelift being the brand that he is, and like how popular Doublelift is as a player. I honestly feel really bad for Dodo in this, and I've never seen a community go after like a GM like this. Like it honestly feels like TL fans like they can't blame like they've already tried to like blame the roster on their issues. Like they've already tried like they can't really blame the coaching staff. Like Spawn's new and Spawn has a really good reputation from challengers and I have a lot of respect for Spawn. Like it's almost like TL are like grasping at straws to what to blame. So they went for like their fourth option in classic TL fashion and now they're trying to point heads at Dodo, like someone who's been around for a while. I don't get it. I
so what you haven't seen is that like there's already been a witch hunt for Dodo for a while. So like here, I've got a couple different things here. One, in terms of why this is happening, I think it is happening because, it's funny. I was the person, because of the way that I approach roster building philosophy and suggest that teams should not just be like spinning the wheel to figure out which players they're going to import every split and then like constantly swapping them in and out. I've been like a vocal critic of the Team Liquid strategy. I think my content has mostly stopped getting posted on the Team Liquid subreddit because I was getting flamed to shit there because they have essentially self-selected a fandom of people who are like, we don't give a shit who plays for us as long as we are winning. Like, who cares? Just sign the biggest names, get them over here, fucking win. Like that is sort of the TL fandom way, I think, in 2024, right? Because a lot of the fans that were there for the big names and personalities have atrophied out and TL has fallen in fandom because of it. So this whole other thing we can talk about another time. But what that has done is created an environment where the people that are there because they expect you to get the best player and then just fucking win, which Team Liquid has not been able to do in recent years. And so rather than getting angry at the players, because again, they are just sort of, in one sense, game pieces that you're putting onto the board from like that fandom's perspective, they're getting angry at the person who's like controlling the pieces or the board, which is Dodo. And so there's been a pretty big witch hunt against Dodo over the course of the last 8 weeks because people are tired of seeing the team not perform. Not to say that's like untraditional in sports, right, for the GM to be taking a lot of heat. And so
if I could just speak on TL fans' behalf, I would say I think a really big narrative in like the TL community has been recently that like kind of conflicting messages, especially going into the 2023 season. It was kind of like, well, we're running a developmental roster, and then it was like the full pivot to the TLCK, right? With like import, we're gonna bring over POSIC, right? And then but even like I guess there was kind of like a really big narrative gap between like, well, here he's having a really rough season, right? So we're gonna bring in APA to make one big push for summer playoffs. Right. So I think a lot of fans were kind of confused in that kind of move, but it was kind of like, oh, here he benched himself in like quotation marks. So I would kind of push back on that. Like the TL fans only care about winning as if like, and instead of that, like, I don't think TL's made moves recently, right, that have been all about winning or all about developing a roster. They kind of ride that middle line that sometimes that can work.
But people like if you go to the Team Liquid subreddit, when they decided to keep APA and Yon, like people were not happy. Like they might have been messaging that they're trying to do more development stuff, and then they've kind of split the needle on some of that. But like I'm looking at the Team Liquid subreddit, which I think is the most concentrated place for fandom. And like the fandom there has been really upset that they are, from everything I've seen, that they have kept these types of players. Like people want, and I think the Doublelift stuff is a pretty big example of that, where people like those fans want veterans more than they want like rookie players.
Yeah, I
don't
think
like.
for me at least, it's kind of hard to see I think TL needs to correct a little bit of their narrative because when I hear the development stuff from them, I don't really buy that. I think they're definitely trying to win, at least from my perspective. You have players like Impact and Core there, and these are players who have a strong desire to win. I can't imagine working with Impact and him not wanting to win. That is ridiculous to me. And so there is a little, and this has been happening, I think, for about 1 to 2 years, maybe. There's just, I don't see them moving in a single set direction, and that is what really has irked me about TL.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know, caller, if you had a response
I would
to what I was saying.
specifically about APA. I haven't been APA's biggest fan, to be honest with you. Especially like I thought especially his Worlds performance, especially with like the teams that we did play at Worlds, particularly I don't think we didn't play very hard teams at Worlds. Besides, we played T1, we played against T1 obviously, right? But the NRG and the PSG, the NRG PSG games, I was just not sold at all. But I think overall, I don't think TL fans were super happy with the APA sub at all, to be honest with you. Even in summer when Harry like announced he was going to bench himself, I just thought it was the entire time it was like what was the really big difference? Like we turned things around, obviously, right? But it was because like we just indulged in picks, like we picked like the Ziggs Tristana, right, every single game, and we just magically were able to turn around because Carey wasn't having bad games on Ari and Azir anymore. But was that really development, or was that a win now move? So you can't really have it both ways. So I think the kind of the narrative whiplash from kind of inviting fans, or kind of to me invited fans to have a very negative reaction to anything that TL was doing in the future.
Well, okay, regardless of sort of where the narrative has been, all I mean to say is I even if they've mixed the messaging at times, I do think that fan base really cares about results. And I think that they haven't been getting them, which is why people were looking for reasons to be mad at Dodo. I don't think, by the way, it's a coincidence that like Peter started talking about this at a time in which everyone is angry at or a lot of Team Liquid fans are angry at the org and also at Dodo. So I think that is why, like, Cubby mentions, I don't think this would have happened if it wasn't Peter. I think that's true, but I also think it wouldn't have happened at a period of time. Like if the team was winning, nobody would be pissed about this, or this would be kind of like not as much of a conversation, in my opinion. So I think there's that. The other thing is, like, on the Steve side, I've known Steve for a very long time. Peter has too, but the reason why I feel like this truth kind of lies somewhere in the middle of this is, like, I love Steve. In my time with Steve is often working on a million different things. I know that people have this impression of him as like being entirely dedicated to the Liquid roster for League of Legends, but like Team Liquid is a massive org. He has a bunch of other executives that he works with. They're doing all these different things. I think they are probably one of the biggest esports orgs in the world in terms of the sheer amount of games and players, and they have like offices all over the place. I have often talked to Steve about things, and then I talked to him about it later, and then he had forgotten we had the initial conversation, or like he's just oftentimes in a lot of different places doing a lot of different things. And so it is not crazy for me to think of the fact that like Steve may not have been tuned in as much as he could have been, or might have had things mixed up during the off season. And that is why like the narratives here seem confusing to both Dodo and Peter. So, and I'm not trying to say that Steve's sub-doddering old man or anything like that, but it is not crazy to me that this has occurred, because I can definitely see left-hand, right-hand type situations here. So
I mean, I hear you, Travis. Like I'm not the GM anymore. Like I'm not leading the off season. That's Andrew. But I'm sure Steve wanted his shiny new toy, Jojo, and like was asking for regular updates on whether he got his shiny new toy or what the pathway is to get his shiny new toy. So that's why the idea that like Jojo slipped through his fingers because he didn't listen or read enough emails around like double his status around constructing a team, like
I don't think that.
Sense.
I just mean like I can understand why Peter's would be getting weird mixed messages from Steve and Dodo. I don't think it's necessarily a situation where like Steve is checked out on the JoJo stuff,
Yeah, I mean, I think the point that I agree with the most of the takes that have been brought up here is, like, Steve literally did a video saying we're going to invest in North American talent because this $7 million roster didn't make Worlds, then didn't really follow that, and then now everybody's a little bit confused.
Yeah.
I think that's a fair take.
And,
It has
to my
been
point,
at least a little bit confusing.
That is clear evidence of Steve kind of being all over the place in terms of what he has said and what is happening at the same time. You know, it's not, and I'm not suggesting that he was lying or anything like that. It's sort of, you know, where Steve's at any given point in time can change frequently.
I mean, I will push back on that a bit because, like, if you're TL at this point, like 3 out of your 6 of your like people, if you include Spawn, came from that Challengers team, and like I mean, I would argue that like I think that.
But it's more of a 2023 thing, right? Cubby is, I think, what we're talking about.
I mean, still, like, Harry was part of that roster, and APA, like, came from the team and made it work. I don't think that, like, I think they haven't, like, Omega invested in talent in the sense that, like, they haven't gone above and beyond, like, what is required. I know that money's a lot lower in that space, but I don't think it's, like, I think they're just split. I kind of agree with the split. But... like, in theory, like, if I'm a GM, I mean, I think that if I can get Impact and Core on a team, like, maybe they can really help shape some rookies. And I think that Jan's development, like, we'd be, like, amiss to say, like, Core hasn't had a part in that, especially knowing how big of a piece Core is to that org as a whole and how much Core has worked with, like, players like Tactical in the past when he was on the secondary team, right? So I think there, like, has been some investment. It's just, like, they still have both feet in 2 buckets, you know.
I think, Cubby, your point would be, it would be easier for me to agree with you if the video they put out last year came out this year instead, because it feels really weird when you're like, yeah, we're gonna go for young talent and like try to build, and then you sign the guy who just lifted the World's trophy, and then the next year when people have now been confused, like then people get confused, then the next year you're back to like, you know, committing to like younger talent again, and you know, but still importing empty. It's just like Team Liquid feels like they're kind of all over the place, both in their messaging and in their strategy. So, I think that, you know, we've all kind of agreed at this point and said this kind of the same way, which is like, it is easy to be confused by what Team Liquid is doing.
I mean, they have a Korean mid laner in NACL, and if they swap them in, of which they have an open import spot, they're a full Korean roster again. Like, just the fact that lines up that way with an open import spot is a bit like, I don't know. Is it calculated? Is it suspicious? Is it all planned? Like, I don't know, but it does feel like they're not ready to conclude in one way or the other.
Yeah. All right. Anyway, we beat this to death. So, Deep Space, anything that you want to shout out here at the end?
I got one funny one. I want to shout out TL Jat. Actually, I was a really big fan of Jat when he was the coach of TL back in 2021. And I just think the way that saga ended was just so terrible, and I didn't like it at all. And I was vindicated by the end of it with a lot of with how, you know, how far he turned out when he went back to EU. So I just that was my main shout out.
So that's what this all came from. This is your TL Jat trauma surfacing.
TL Jat trauma for sure.
Yeah.
Shout out to you, Travis. PapaSmithy, really cool when you were still in LCK. But you're still cool now, but, you know, less cool, of course.
That's fair.
We'll catch you next time, Deep Space. Thanks for the call.
Thank you.
All right, we're gonna zip through these next 2 calls as we close on the end of the show.
All right, here we go.
Definitely went on for longer with that one than I guess I should have known. Anyway, Daddy Griff, thank you for the 39 months. E-Smoothie, Yo Sir, let's see, give me your ice cream now, and Sherigan Chidori, thank you for the Prime. Thanks everyone for all the support and the subs. I will be streaming after the show, so please stick around. And if you ever want to watch this show live, you can do so Mondays at 7 Pacific is when we tend to do this over on Twitch, and now on YouTube as well. NoReason is here. NoReason, where are you calling from?
I'm calling from York Region, Ontario, Canada.
Ontario, Canada. What do you want to talk about on the show?
So you wanted to take about the NACL team because they just hit first, and
to be clear, I didn't want this take, but the other 3 did. So go ahead.
Yeah. So it's just a question. It's like, remember we had the C9 academy team was supposed to be the academy team with like Sven on it, and it was supposed to be the practice team, and it was just supposed to be completely stacked with talent. And FlyQuest this year is a similar thing, right? We have what's effectively 5 LCS players on the team. You know, other than Sajed, he's a rookie. So my question is, does FlyQuest practice with their NACL team? And if so, what would they look like without it? Like, because it's a very stacked team.
And really quickly, Cubby, do you want to give an explanation on what's been, for the people that haven't been following what's been going on in the minor leagues?
So FlyQuest Challengers is they're first. They just secured first in the regular season. So FlyQuest went first in the regular season. And hey, Chris, since you remind me very often, what's Quad's CSD at 15? And where does it rank?
He has the highest CSD of any mid laner in the world at 22 at 15.
Yeah.
He's doing pretty good.
He's doing pretty good in there.
Yeah, so the roster is, for people who don't know, not necessarily household names at the LCS level. Probably only the support Chime is someone LCS players or LCS fans would know. But Sturdy and Shaden is top jungle. They were rumored to be part of the EG LCS project if they were going to be still in the league this year. Quad coming over from the LCK, previously known as Solka, Cassiopeia One Trick, as some people would know, and Sajed, a pure rookie. Masu number 2, we kind of think of in some ways. I guess Andrew can speak to the specific amount of time, but we do internal scrims on a weekly basis, pretty much throughout the whole season, especially night blocks if we kind of need to train up on a new patch and things like that. Both leagues are played on live patch, which is helpful. I think roster construction wise, there's a lot of different philosophies of way to go, but I think most rosters this year were built with the intention of winning and of challenging the LCS, especially with all the rumors of the fact that there'll be an international tournament at the end of the year. Being able to represent from academy to NACL into an international tournament is a big thing. So yeah, very, very high baseline practice team. Although, internals are always a bit iffy at different teams. I mean, Andrew, what would you say about them as kind of like a practice squad, or kind of like the philosophy there?
Yeah, I think the exciting thing for us this year is this is definitely the strongest academy team we've really ever created. And so really with that in mind, it's been able to influence LCS practice quite a bit. And so, without getting to too specifics, I could say we typically will scrim the academy team, once, twice a week. A lot of the times they will be our night block partner. And so right now LCS practice is really only in 2 blocks and then potentially a 3rd block. And so we'll either scrim an LCS team or an NACL team. But I would say for a lot of LCS teams, really have not seen that productive of practice between NACL and LCS due to that skill gap being quite large. And so, really happy with our NACL team being a very quality practice partner this year. And so these guys in NACL have been getting actually a lot of LCS scrims. And so that's been really awesome for them. It's been helping push their own growth and development. And so really for us, it's been incredibly important. And actually, as we get later into playoffs, NACL team is going to be even more important for us because your viability to scrim multiple teams as you get deeper into playoffs really starts to decrease. And so really going to actually be looking for our NACL team probably starting next week to be probably one of our highest tiered practice partners. And so again, they've been great for us. So could not be happier with how they've been performing.
Yeah. I mean, at least speaking on that for FlyC, the big award that we give out for challengers is most valuable prospect. And I know that I have to submit 5 names, and it's pretty likely that I have Quad and Surdy on my list, and potentially Shaden, even Chime. I mean, these guys were pretty crazy. I don't think Chime makes it, but Chime's had a really good split. I think that if LCS teams are looking to upgrade, the first place you probably look is FlyC. And I don't just say that because these guys are on there. I say that as someone that covers the league and goes through the tape. And I mean, I think it's a really big advantage to have a secondary team, especially when it's that good. I'm kind of bummed that a lot of the teams aren't in person. I know that's a lot of a bigger cost value, but I think there's a lot of value to competing in person. And it's kind of interesting because with how the league's changed, Maryville is the 2nd team in NACL right now, and they do get the privilege of playing in person, given they are at college, and I think that's a big advantage for them. Also featuring 2 members that used to be on FlyQuest that are both playing really well in UG and Spirax. So, yeah, I don't know. I think it's been an interesting split for challengers, but it's pretty clear that FlyC is there's a really clear top 3, and FlyC is also clearly the strongest of the top 3. So yeah, I'm kind of curious. We'll have a fun playoff ourselves moving forward. But
Yeah.
Yeah, I would just ask, having a challenger team or academy team that is pretty good, do you think it makes a meaningful difference in the competitiveness of your LCS teams? Because it feels like the caller reference, C9 was maybe a stronger team when they had a strong challenger team that they could scrim against.
I mean, it does give you extra opportunities to test hypotheses, whether that is a full 5v5 or 1v1s and 2v2s. We've done individual practice there too. I think it's just, will your LCS players kind of like reject the premise of kind of like practicing with an academy team? Definitely on previous orgs, there's definitely been kind of baggage around that, both at my org and at other orgs, just recognizing the value of it. So credit to LCS players for buying into it. I'm on the train, right? Like we've kept our challenges team, last summer and this year, and intend to keep it in the future too. I think there is inherent value there as long as the economic sides make sense. And so, if we can continue to promote people like we did Masu this year, then we'll continue to run an NACL program. So we're very happy with it.
Yeah. All right. Go ahead, caller.
I don't know. It's just a quick, like, I don't know if you can answer this, but has any other LCS teams like approached FlyC for practice? Because I know in EU, there's a
Yeah, they've had 3, 4, 5 different LCS teams they've scrimmed with.
Okay.
It doesn't always line up perfectly because we do have players who are East Coast based, and LCS teams would prefer to scrim on LA server. So sometimes there's like a ping gap alongside the LCS team. Often being very, very competitive or better, straight up. So
they're really
it hasn't been perfect, but they've been a good scrim partner for LCS teams. Yeah,
it's really common for LCS teams to scrim NACL teams, like if they want to hide stuff or like they want to practice something specifically, just to like given what class it is. I mean, our challengers teams, a lot of them do scrim like the Latin American teams too, to kind of hide it from the league and just get different practice. So yeah, and I mean, FlyC is like top choice to scrim. They're good. If they were an LCS, I don't know if they'd be last or not. And I think it's the biggest compliment I could pay them. So, yeah.
Nice. All right. Thanks, caller. Anything you want to shout
out? A shout out to a couple. Shout out to my internet provider for giving me the worst ever because I just went 0-10 solo queue because I was lagging. And shout out to NACL player who I think has like an incredible amount of talent and could definitely be an LCS, and they're both on Maryville, and that's UG, Spyrax, and it's actually Scary Jerry. Like, whenever I watch Scary Jerry, I'm like, this guy is just really good. And shout out to Meech. I called, like, as soon as he joined Immortals Area of Effect, I'm like, this guy's just gonna be the next big AD carry, and looks like I'm right, so I'm,
Damn.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, hey, thank you so much for the call, and we will catch you next time.
All right, much love, guys. Thank you.
All right, we got one final call to go, and then we'll be winding down the show. So off Cubby goes to grab him. For everyone else, again, stick around, please, because I'm going to do a quick bounty on Twitch. In fact, if the YouTube people come over at the end of the show, you'd be helping me financially. It's a free way to support me. Just run over to Twitch really quickly to help watch with this bounty. Muzzvein is here. Muzz, where are you calling from?
Calling from Des Moines, Iowa.
Des Moines, Iowa. What do you want to talk about on the show?
So my take is that River or Quid are going to be the ones who win MVP, but Inspired and Jojo are going to be the ones who get first team All-Pro. So we'll have an MVP that is not first team, mostly due to the impact they have on the team of like the most valuable player, because I know quite a few. There's a lot of discussion of is it the best player, is it most valuable? And I think that Inspired in particular is looking really, really good, but you kind of just hear everyone say, well, he can do what he does just because Jensen and Blippo are playing so well. So it's going to be one of the 100 Thieves guys, but the other ones will take the first team All-Pro.
So I'd like your take a lot more if it was one of these other players should get it, but they won't. But like I could tell you that the way that this works for a lot of people is they're like, okay, this player's MVP. Okay, I've solved my first place vote for that role. Like it's just people, especially I think the pro players are not going to think in the they just don't sort of go through that thought process to even revise the idea that something like this could be on the other case. So setting that aside, do you want to elaborate a little bit on why you think it should be this way, even though I would be utterly shocked if it works some other way?
And I will say my original take that I typed in was that they're the front runners for MVP, but I wanted to make a little stronger take.
Sure.
So I think that this is the case because of when a lot of people come, as we were saying, a lot of people discuss as if they're very close players, and I think that you're going to have some people who think that Quid, the people who believe the best player should just get MVP, are going to give it to Quid and River, and then the people who believe that it should go to the most valuable to their team player are also going to be voting for those ones, versus you might get a few more of the think it should go to the best player, kind of splitting their votes between Inspired, Whippo, Jojo, those sort of people. So just
Travis,
I think
what's the split between players like org side and media, like roughly? Is it like 60-40 org side in terms of amount of
we keep saying org side and media, but like there's org side, media side, and then Riot side.
Sure.
And I think that media.
I'm just saying outside of like like players and coaches, basically.
Yeah. I think the non-team ones will I would guess will probably be something like 60. It'll probably be like 60-40 non-team now because of the fact that like there's 2 less teams. I think that will be significant. They lose 4 votes. Because I feel like in the past it's usually been pretty close to 50-50. If Greg is still in the chat, he can probably say.
Theoretically, team side lost 4 votes, right?
Yeah. So like I would imagine that there will be more non-team voters this year than otherwise. But I don't know. They might have also pulled back on media because there were a lot of media in the past, and then quite frankly, I also believe there's probably been some atrophy on the media side. But I don't know. It's just depends on Wild Riot gets it.
I think this caller has a pretty intriguing point because the example I'll give is that if you look at individual stats, JoJo's like running the league. He has like 15 CSD in a major region. It's really fucking hard to do that. So coming back to my point about like players rate on the pressure exerted in scrims, like the 8 mid laners, the 8 team representatives, I assume are gonna on aggregate vote JoJo as like all pro first team mid laner. Doesn't necessarily mean they're gonna vote him for MVP, right? There's like 2 different things. So I can definitely see there being this interesting race where the votes for all pro first team and second team mid laner could be really close because people, or maybe it'll just be like a landside JoJo. I imagine it'll be really close just because it's people outside of teams also voting. But then the all pro, I think JoJo won't be voted all pro. Sorry, it won't be voted MVP of the league, even though just because of kind of like the super team fallacy and kind of C9 losing games. So I can see how like the storylines of best player, most valuable player, the player I'm pressured by can all get confusing, and thus the rankings might be out of order. So I can definitely see it.
I think this is why I think it's actually really important we do better at defining really what the MVP trophy is for, because I kind of like this caller's take where, for myself, I would say JoJo and Inspired are first pro all team. I think, they have stats and objectives that really could back this up. No doubt about that. But, when I think of the MVP and like who is that most valuable person, I think I can see that argument really for River there and what he has done to the 100 Thieves team. And so, is River's second pro all team MVP? Like, I wouldn't be shocked to see that actually happen. But, for me and based on what I've seen, I know without a doubt, I look at Inspired and JoJo and the way those 2 have played, they are for sure that first pro all team, at least, for me. But that's why I go to the point of how do we define, what this MVP trophy really is for?
Yeah. I mean, that's the discussion we have every time this comes up, because I think historically it has not been very well defined, and I feel like that's somewhat intentional. But yeah, I don't know. Cubby, do you have a thought on this?
Yeah. I mean, I think the caller actually kind of sums up why I'm very much on the River MVP train. Because I don't think Quid can win MVP because he's not the best mid laner in the league. That's JoJo, who is putting up 15 CSD at 15 for yet another split, may I mention, as he has done that, like, I think more often than not, which is just crazy to think of in the LCS. I really think that River is the MVP this year. I think Inspired is a great player. The argument last year between River and Blabber, I was siding slight with Blabber, even if I thought River was a little bit more valuable to that team. I think this year it's a really easy vote for me if I got one. I don't think 100 Thieves is nearly as close to the record as, like, given any other jungler in the league, except for maybe Inspired in that team. They just can't function without River for me. I think River really makes that team work. And for me, like, I think that while Inspired and River, like, I think that they are 1-2 junglers. If you put Inspired above it, that's fine. I think they both have pros and cons, but the way that 100 Thieves, for me, gets out of their weakest part of the game in laning phase, it's because of what River does consistently. And I think River is just crazy. For me, I think that River, like, I got to give him first team as well. I think both those junglers are outstanding. But I think that the performances that River put up were just really impressive. I think a lot of Inspired skill, I will say. I think that because 100 Thieves fights so much, you get to see some of the flashiness that River has in fights, whereas I think Inspired brings a lot of soft skill, like how he sets up maps and how he plays it. Like, I think the Poppy game that you guys played against, I think it was NRG this week, where Contracts had Lee Sin, is like a great example of, like, Inspired invading Raptors late and then trying to cross. Like, if your bot lane doesn't die at level 3, that game gets so incredibly hard for NRG. And then not only is Inspired able to do that, but then later in the game, like, his Poppy was so clutch for, like, that game got really crazy. He had some really big keeper's verdicts that ended up helping you guys secure that win. Like, Inspired is a huge part, but I've seen River have some fights on Vi. I remember LCS ran one with, like, how much River was doing the peel as Vi. Like, this guy for me in fights is crazy. I think that how he sets up the map for his laners, I've seen a lot of maps where he is able to get 2 or 3 laners ahead. And he will sack his own game for that and then come back later on with how well himself and 100 Thieves can fight. I think it's just really impressive, like, what River's done this split. And for me, it's a really easy vote for him for MVP.
Yeah, it's really tough. I feel like Jojo's going to end up being number 3 for me. And I just really feel like he's done so much for the C9 team that, like...
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I know it is very clear how much River is doing, but it is much tougher for me to pick between to pick Quid or River in the first place spot than I think a lot of people are making it seem. Like, I brought this up last week whenever I was streaming something else, or maybe it was in the after show, and my chat was just like, why is this even a discussion? I'm like, I don't know, dude. Like, Jojo just does a lot. Like, I wonder how disastrous the C9 season would have been if it wasn't for what Jojo's doing to keep that team alive.
That's a good point.
Like,
I mean, that's a really good point.
So,
and that's why it's hard. Like, I kind of agree with Travis a bit in the terms of, like, when you, like, try to separate, like, River and Quid, which I think is a lot of people, because people will look at 100 Thieves equal most amount of wins, and I think that you look at River and Quid and you're like, which one do you believe in? I will say that maybe I'm a hater or I'm missing something, but I do think that, like, people will ascribe value on River in terms of, like, he must be the engine behind the team, or he's the most experienced player. His style, I could see it with my eyes at Dignitas GG. I see it at 100. Like, he deserves, like, points for bringing up these rookies, like, raising the floor of this team. Like, a River team can only be so poor because he's got such a pretty specific knowledge or, like, way he likes to play the game, which is, like, pretty much 1-to-1, like, Inspired, right? In terms of, like, they are very, very different players, but they are the engines of their teams. But I feel a little bit of the River is the MVP of the league is similar to, like, well, of course, 100 Thieves coaching staff must be the coaching staff of the year because of look at the players and how much value they got out of them. They must have added so much value. There's quite a lot of conjecture there, I think, in that point. Whereas if I just look at, like, holy crap, that guy played good, like, I think it's Quid of the two easily. Like,
yeah,
especially with, like, what you expected of him before. There was a lot of, like, wow, what an outplay, or, like, he saved the game. 100 Thieves was like the amount of, like, game, like, moments in games where they were down gold and Quid did something remarkable to turn the game around was very high, because there was a lot of moments like that, and that's how they played their games out. So personally, I think from, like, a, you know, easy on the eye, like, highlight reel, it's easy to give it to Quid, and in my head, that should probably be the person who wins the MVP, is like the person with the best highlight reel to some
Really?
degree.
I don't think Quid could win because I don't think Quid's close to being the best man in the league. And your scout tweeted that, Empire, and I very much align with him. For me, that rules out Quid.
I think that's a fair take, but then it comes back to like, what does MVP mean? You know?
Yep. Yeah. I think that's the point that really has to be addressed, because for me, when I think of MVP going to the best player in the league,
Does the MVP have to be the
then
highest Madden rating? Like the highest FIFA rating? Does it have to be the guy's 99? If so, then Jojo Pyun probably wins, right? But is it how it works? Otherwise, like, why do we even play the split? Just give it to Jojo, right? I don't know.
Juggle Juice still salty about you placing them 8th in the chat right now.
I love it.
Oh, that's so funny. All right. Anyway, thanks so much, caller. I think this was a good MVP discussion, and thank you for saving it. I would have been really bummed if we'd done this show and not been able to have that conversation. So, but maybe people just don't care as much about MVP these days, or maybe they don't care until it gets awarded. But either way, muzzvein, anything you want to shout out here at the end?
Yeah, so I want to shout out the Challengers League. FlyQuest had some absolute bangers to end the season. And if loans are a thing, kind of like we see in the LPL, I hope we can see those players on some LCS rosters in the summer, because you talked about long-term development. And I really want to see Surdy versus Sniper, because 7 solo kills in a weekend was crazy. We're getting 7 solo kills in a single game if that happens.
Actually true.
That's actually true.
And I also want to shout out Travis's YouTube membership. If you kind of have a goldfish brain like me and can't remember anything 2 days past when it happens, getting all the interviews right away after the weekend is amazing to remember what they're talking about. So that's all I got. Thanks for having me on.
Nice, thank you. Yeah, this week I don't have interviews coming out, because what I did was I actually had a bunch of the players do a tier list of a lot of the different positions. So we're gonna do that instead this week, because I'm experimenting with formats, because I feel like interviews are not performing as well in 2024, maybe across the board. I don't think just with me, but at least for LCS. So we're trying some different things to see how it works, but hopefully
those also come out quite a bit earlier.
Yeah,
on membership.
Yes, thank you so much. I really appreciate the shout out. So thank you. Have a good one. All right. That is the show. Please, if you're watching live, don't go anywhere. I need to stay here. YouTube, feel free to come over to the Twitch channel, because I need you all here. Let's do a round of shoutouts here, though. Cubby, anything you want to plug or promote here?
Yeah, I teased a podcast I was going to be a part of last week, and it launched last week. So it's The Jungle on Dextero. It's me, Medic, Broxa, and Ginny. So I'm 1v3 and trying to convert Broxa to NA every episode. So the better TL does, the better my chances are for that. But I'm sure these guys don't want TL to perform this weekend.
Yeah, and shout out to that, by the way, because I think there are a lot of people who wish that Hotline League covered a broader league, or had broader league coverage, and we really have been trying to stay faithful to LCS as we've done this to be the LCS podcast, I guess, besides the dive, because most go much more broad. But I think it's cool that Cubby's able to rep North America and LCS on a wider scale.
I don't know why they landed on me for that, but I'm excited to be a part of it. And I gave you a shout out at the end of that episode, Travis.
Thank you.
We're gonna cross pollinate every episode.
I'm down. We'll get the EU viewers in on their show.
Yeah, and then shout out to these guys too for joining us. It's been really fun to have the front office, 100 Thieves, and FlyQuest. And yeah, I think that you guys have done good work as always, being first in both leagues. And good luck this playoff.
Yeah, very good. Andy, how about you? Any plugs? Anything you want to promote?
No, I mean, I think I'm just super happy with how, LCS and NACL have been performing. This is my first split at FlyQuest, and, we came into the off season. We really made a lot of changes, got a lot of different players and coaches in here. And so, I really just couldn't be happy with, how everything is gone. And, as Numi brings up, the Masu piece will be going out tomorrow, so that'll be super exciting.
Masu Drive episode, exciting.
Yeah, we'll be having another announcement related to Masu tomorrow. So that'll be exciting.
Right thing? Okay, cool. Mm-hmm. Nice. That's awesome. You said another announcement, Andy? Sorry, I spoke over you.
Yeah. We have another announcement related to Masu tomorrow, so that'll be super exciting.
Hey.
But yeah, that's pretty much what I got.
Yeah. All right, PapaSmithy, anything that you would like to shout out?
Yeah, a shout out to Andrew for coming on and the whole competitive team. Like a first regular season is not job done, but it's like okay, it's a good start. So really proud of all those all that hard work and long hours we put in the off season so far, kind of trending in the right direction. So proud of them there. Shout out to our socials people. I think the content and socials wise, the FlyQuest account on Twitter, which you guys should follow, has had a lot of fun content. I especially enjoyed the Jensen interview about Azir being globally banned that we put out last week. That was a banger. And just trying to do cool things for the fans and grow our community. So hopefully people have been enjoying that, and cool that the Riot broadcast picked it up. And it's playoffs, so we're going to have to increase our performance on the socials and content side too. So hopefully we have some cool stuff to show you guys during that. And speaking of you guys, like don't get to talk to the fans like I used to as much. I appreciate all the fans, whether it's people putting in good takes, bad takes, takes that Cubby picked up, or takes in the Twitch chat. Most people know that I try to make it into the Twitch chat most weeks, and I do that to get a pulse on where the NA kind of fan base is at these days. And I'm excited that all these years in, we're still talking about this children's video game that we love so much.
Yeah, very true. Shout out to you guys for coming on. Really appreciate it. Chill Spencer, Bowen, iNuber, Bo Carnegie, Ramble, and then Mitch over on YouTube. Thank you all for supporting the channel. Please stick around. Also, LCS is on Thursday. Shout out to Riot, because I've been critical of their promotion of schedule adjustments, and this week in particular, I saw on the broadcast that they went really hard. So I think good on them. But yes, LCS starts this Thursday, so please tune in. For everyone else, that's Hotline League. We'll catch you next week. Monday at 7 is when we tend to do these, unless something goes wrong, we have to shift it. But we'll be back next Monday to talk about the first 4 days of playoffs. So we'll catch you then.